Hello, the interwebs. This is Gamer 1745 here. I'm just seeing that everything is looking good. I hope. Just, yeah, YouTube, Restream, all seems to think this is good. We're live. As I start to talk. Okay, well, let's just... All right. Hello, everyone. This, of course, is Gamer 1745, and we are playing some Manor Lords, which they have heard yesterday. A new version is coming soon, a new beta version, that will allow castle making be upgraded from sort of wooden forts to stone forts, and we're having enough stone problems as it is now. But I think it's a really nice addition to the game. I think they're taking this seriously. It's obviously and there's nothing wrong with what I'm going to say. It's just an observation. They're keeping, I think, this a small project instead of trying to throw in a lot, because this game has gone pretty big. But instead of trying to throw in a lot of developers and throw lots of money at it, it's looking like it's staying small but growing. So at least from the game is growing. At least from my limited sources. I don't have any real inside information, but I do have a little bit of feed information, so know a bit here. Now, so this is looking like it's going to take years to really develop. It might get out of beta before years, but continue to grow and develop, which is really good. Not that it's taking years, but that it's going to continue to grow and develop. Now, it is winter time. And, I like talking about history. I know not huge amounts about the medieval period. I know more detailed information about late Renaissance, more 18th century, Age of Enlightenment, knowing about the Highlands, the Scottish Highlands. And you maybe noticed the tartan and some of the logos, and notice the year 1745, you might sort of get that, understand a little bit of that. And the Highlands in the Age of Enlightenment was very tribal. Sure, they had things like muskets and flintlock pistols, flintlock muskets, flintlock pistols, but they were very much still living in a medieval way of life in many ways up in the Highlands. And so I'm extrapolating that back. I don't really think it changes much, except from the Middle Ages to starting in the Renaissance is the Little Ice Age. And I know a lot of you people believe in man-caused global warming, but there was the Little Ice Age in the Renaissance. That is well documented. Now, this, of course, is winter, is December here. And it has warmed up since the Little Ice Age. That is what I think we have been seeing. I think we are now getting back to what the temperatures of the medieval warm period. I think this is another warm period in the Northern Hemisphere. I don't think we have good records in the Southern Hemisphere. And if you look at it, very, very few people live in the Southern Hemisphere. It's sort of northern Brazil is where the equator goes through / the Congo. So, most everyone and most significant civilizations, you do have the Inca, but we have so little records and information from the Inca, of course, down in South America. That was a well-developed civilization. but most well-developed record-keeping type civilizations are in the northern hemisphere. So yeah. Now, also, I'm up at my secret mountain base. I don't know if you know the microphone difference and whatnot. I'm running off of my laptop here. Nice laptop, but still laptop. The ground, literally, right now, looks just like this out there. And there is snow on some of the trees still. Now, yesterday, it was inches deep basically everywhere. Oh, the roads were more or less clear. The black asphalt that melted off of there, but all the trees have lots of snow on it. It had at least 4 inches of snow at one point, but in the sense that it's sort of spotty like this is where I am at now at my secret mountain base. And for those again who don't know, I'm from California, living in the beach cities, so that's a big change. Just taking a look over here, and thank you for liking the video. And yes, Arno says first, and also cheese cubes. I don't have any cheese cubes. I'm not a big cheese eater. I like mild cheese, and just don't eat much of it. Now, I like, the usual sort of cheese on pizza and things, but I'm not a big cheese eater. I know you Europeans eat lots of cheese, but we have a problem. It's also an opportunity. Brigands. So what we're going to do is, because I want to do this as, well, it's up here. So let's look at the map. We can come this way. So instead of going south around. Let's muster this unit here and this unit here. Hey, Arno. Yes, the snow. It like I was saying, I don't know. There's a bit of a delay. Looks outside looks very much like this, and that there's brown. It's sort of Arizona. That's as far as I want to go into saying where my secret mountain base is. Obviously, it's in the mountains, but Arizona's sort of dry normally. I mean, it rains, it has monsoons, but it's normally sort of dry. So much of the ground is sort of gray gravel area. Even if there's trees and whatnot, it's still sort of brown and grayish gravel area. So it looks very much like that. But I don't know that it snowed much last night. Well, you might know, but that's supposed to be a secret. Now, Arno, let's see. You better get some cyanide pills because somebody may be coming after you to find out that, well, it's in America. You're saying, yeah, but if you actually know exactly where it is, somebody might want to get that information. So you might have to take cyanide pills so that you don't reveal where the secret mountain base is. Yes, it's in America. It's actually in Arizona, which is still part of America. Last I checked, though, that's California was thinking about leaving. Now, and part of what I'm doing here, part of it is like I was starting the stream is life had rhythms about it. Oh, he just sort of, I guess, fell or something. Or was he bending over to pick up those firewood? Not sure. Has certain rhythms to it. Certain things were done in the winter, certain things were done in the summer. And so I really don't have a great idea of, I mean, I could try to come in here and hold over some of these guys. But I'm trying to pull the soldiers away from their other duties, the militia soldiers, while they're not like plowing, planting, sowing, harvesting, that kind of stuff. So I'm trying to do balance when I do certain things. Oh, if I know, there's just a few people here. Few people I have been told, I've asked, and they, yeah, I watch it later. Watch it if you guys are interested. You know, we do have a Discord server, and I did post photos of the snow um, uh, out from my house. Okay, what we're going to do here is reduce taxes. The 10%, that's like per month. So I think, or it's per time period. It's not like it's 10% per year. So you can get like 10% of the month's income, or whatever, or I think it's 10% of the regional wealth. I knew that pretty sure at one point, but I think it's that. So the other thing I want to do here is click over here, since they're going to come out from here. This is why we came up to here. You get the troops concentrated. Now, in real life, I want to say this again, you would not go campaigning in winter. It's just not a good idea. Get all 3 units. Come up to here. Not sure if we're going to cross this bridge or that bridge. No. Here. Okay. I want to come out here and see. Oh, we'll probably cross this bridge. We're going up to there. Oh, we also have a bandit camp up there. Okay, we get 2 bandit camps to clear out. I am hoping we get some. Okay, we got some timber or planking or whatever. I wanted to build a church over here. Oh, we need 20. Okay, I think we have just 5. Don't worry, gamer. No one knows where you live, how you look, and how old you are. My guess is 200 years old. Well, I look 200 years old. Yeah, that's probably about right. Yeah, I'm gonna. There are a few more people watching now. There's reasons why I've tried to keep my location and whatnot secret. And I know I'm some little tiny YouTuber that nobody really knows, unimportant, in the grand scheme of things. And so I'm not like so self-important. But you're vulnerable out here more so than you would be otherwise. So I'm concerned about that. And I presume, I don't know, prove it. I'm not exactly sure what to prove it is referring to because of the delay. You guys may have heard of the very bad situation. I guess her name is Amaranth. I've never watched any of her streams. I think she's a Twitch streamer. that some people broke into her home or whatever and held her hostage and tried to get her. That I'm a small YouTuber. Well, I'm on YouTube and I have a very small audience, so I'm a small YouTuber. See, proved it. I know you're watching over on Twitch, but and like I say, I'm very small. I'm more worried about things in California than I'm worried about things here because, again, that I'm small. But, the old 5 minutes of hate, wouldn't the left love to just target a right winger and whatnot? I'm not so worried here, but there I'm a bit more. So it's, trying to be a little dramatic with the secret mountain base stuff, but okay, we've got 6 months of fuel, so I don't think we need more fuel. One day we will find out Gamer is actually Trump. I don't sound anything like Trump. That's for sure. That's for dang sure. Yes, you do. Well, I don't think I sound anything like him. Especially our accent. He's a New Yorker and I'm a Californian. And I have to wonder how much, people, Europeans or, would have a better understanding, but and maybe South Americans, but compared to Japanese or Chinese with different American accents. So to me, yeah, you look at my friend Admiral Teague, who's from New York, well, New York area, um, and his very different accents to the way I speak. We're getting rid of the run command so that you don't get tired out. Move up in formation like that. So do the Dutch think we all sound the same?
Together! Stay together!
Yes, sure, why not? Let's rise up here. I don't know how much high and low elevations affects combat in this game. Ah, you love to mess with Gamer. Okay. These guys are almost marching in step. So these guys are doing pretty well. These guys are all jumbled. Okay, let's come just. Oh no. Pause. I don't want to be getting all jumbled there. Let's 2 ranks. 2 ranks. 1 rank. Professional soldiers. I'm moving to meet them for 2 reasons. One, it's going to take them a long time to get here, and I want to get this over with. I got that other tent route to go after. And 2, I got to send at least 1 unit over there with where their tents are to pillage it to get some of our stuff back, which really just gets back as well gold, but and we didn't bring the archers with us because these, to me, mostly. Let's pause as they're starting there. Let's come here and quickly change facings there, and you move it like that. You come in even more from the side and surround these guys. Overwhelm them. Okay, so let's send the smaller militia group up to here. Now we're going to say run. The other 2, well, no, we're going to wait for those guys to get out of the way. So we're just selecting these 2. Yeah, head this way. I don't know that we need to take, I think it's just going to be another 18 guys over here. So let's start heading over this way. Look at our other areas. I think our main area is humming along just fine. I don't think it needs a lot of specific management. But over here, okay, we have enough for church. Okay, so right now we're at 48% approval. Well, I think it's giving me, for some reason, unusually high ratings, but I think it's going to go up. But I think I do want to put a church, right about like that. And we'll also get these guys off the saw pit for a while. Now we can even get them off of the. Hey, T2. Yeah, have you ever seen Gamer and Batman? Place? Man, I'd love a Bat Cave. You're Captain Holland. I don't know what Captain Holland is. I'm doing very well. Captain Netherlands? What's Captain Netherlands? Pillage it. Message. Yes, this is going into the treasury. Because we could use more treasury results. You can head home. We're going to head you to home. But as you keep talking about, sounds pretty close to a bat cave. Well, that'd be cool. Dutch version of Captain America. Okay. Yeah, I used to watch the Batman TV series as a kid. I've seen some, not this latest guy, whether he's done 1 or 3, I don't know, Batman movies. I've seen some of the other Batman movies. Thought they were okay. Christian Bale and and Clooney before him, and Keaton before him, or whatever. I thought they're okay, but still, Adam West Batman with that Batmobile is still my Batman. I would say I'm very much, when it comes to superhero type stuff, very much a normie. Not hugely into it all. Like the older Batman movies with Keaton. Yeah, those were good. I may have seen all of those. I'm not sure. That's how well I know it. I think I have of those, but not all the recent ones. I know some of the people like some of the more modern Batman because it's, I don't know if more realistic is the right term. It's less comedical is definitely true. But anything with, hey ZZ, anything with a villain that's like a penguin or whatever, or the you know um, Mr. Freeze. I remember that for, Arnold Schwarzenegger playing that role. Anything like that, it isn't being too realistic. It's just maybe a little less comedical. Keaton reprised the role in the latest Flash movie. I may have heard something about that. I didn't see that movie. I watch so few modern movies. I'm just. I have very low expectations of modern movies, so I. Just avoid them mostly. Some may be good. I've seen a few maybe, but I think Hollywood has destroyed itself. Mercenary camp, local thugs. These guys are there others? Oh, no, that's just a resource. I got good news yesterday that the exemption for my agencies were approved for newbies like me, so I'm safe at least until, if when reductions is forced happens, all those well advertised in advance. Great to hear, ZZ. Great to hear. I am not against government employees. Like I said, my dad was one for most of his career. It's the, no show, no work type government employees that, as well as, bloated, like I said before, like the whole federal Department of Education should not exist. Now, departments of education in the 50 states? Certainly. How big should it be? Well, it depends on the state. You got tiny little states like Rhode Island. So just some departments or some agencies, some major departments and whatever should just disappear. Not the Navy, because, sort of, just in a vague sense, that's who you're working for. So those, yeah, obviously the Navy should stay around. Oh, I'll give you, T2. A few weeks ago, Elon Musk sent out or his team sent out emails to all federal employees requesting that they, sort of bullet point 5 things they did that previous week. And initially it was non-replies, people who didn't reply. That was them quitting the government. I think Trump sort of, sort of changed that. So Elon Musk, but did sort of say, okay, you got another week. There's another email going out. Everyone needed to reply to it. Part of what Elon Musk did come out and say, we just want to see who's effing reading the official email, because they're not sure that, because there's been a huge, I'll get to your comment in just a second, amount of work from home employees in the federal government. And to me, it's shocking what the percentage is, and I don't have a good percentage, but it's a very big percentage. And they're just trying to find out who's, logging in and reading their emails and doing their job. So it's partially just that and whatnot. Let's get that. Easy. And we all agree among my coworkers that cutting is a good thing. There are people that should not be continually employed and game the system, yes. But taking a chainsaw and cutting people just because they are new is not effective. It should be based on performance. Oh, yeah, you're absolutely right. But how do I put this? Well, obviously, and like I've sort of said in previous conversations, to me it depends on the department. Obviously, I don't think there's any good coming out of the Department of Education. Oh, but it funds this, it funds. Okay, give the money. The Congress can allocate, money to each state, equally to all states, or based it on size of student populations or whatever. Congress can directly grant money to states. So that the Department of Education, I think, should be cut 100%. Now, other departments that I think should exist, certainly, and it, how do I put this? How to do it, I don't think we can take huge amounts of time on a lot of this. So probably good people or good positions, which are two different things, meaning something that people are doing are a good job to do, whether the person is doing it as good or not at doing the job. That's a different thing, as well as just people that do the job well. Get rid of the run. Get rid of the run. Okay, they're coming to meet us, so let's move. We're going to take a little more time here. Let them get out of the trees. Trump dialed back Doge and returned the initiatives to cabinet officials on Thursday. Well, good. Doge has a certain amount of power. Doge, again, for, I say regards bullet points email that my coworkers were directed by Hectus not to reply on the OPM. The DoD would be doing their own version, so I followed the order. Yes, you need to follow your chain of command, especially in any DoD department, more so than like the punching bag for me is always the Department of Education. But like I was saying, Doge is a department that was established by Obama and funded by Congress. I forget the exact name. It was something like the Digital Services Department or something like that. All Trump did was rename it, hired a few people, and as a special advisor has Elon Musk. So it's very much within the government. It's not some extra governmental organization. It is not a, and let's see what Tito's saying. Seems like it would be safer to figure out within departments, especially if it's, okay, yeah, well, yeah, sensitive departments, yes. what I have to wonder about is I have a strong suspicion. No, I think there's enough fact that easily 70+% of federal employees are Democrats. I have a very strong suspicion because the 70+% is a definable fact. I don't know the exact percentage, but it's really high. I have a strong belief that the hiring policies that have been going since Obama, and Trump never got control of it, so even though Trump was president for 4 years in there, so the last 16 years have been specifically the people hiring other people have been hiring left-wingers. I have a strong suspicion of that in very many departments. I don't know about ZZ's department, and I'm sure that there are, specific, I don't mean, the Department of the Navy. I mean just his sort of group that he's working with. Sometimes there very well may be technical people that aren't, that department is an exception to. But I really believe they've been hiring to the left. It's like you look at university professors, and we'll just take university professors, which obviously are not necessarily, they're not federal government employees unless they're, work for the, the military academies or something, because those are government employees, federal government. But the university professors are something like 95% plus Democrats. And this is just something that is entirely wrong. It would be wrong if they were 95% Republicans. So it's not just, slightly more Democrats than Republicans. It's almost like they won't hire a Republican if they know that they're Republican. So that is sort of why I want, and again, not so much the DOD, but yes, it depends on the departments of the DOD too. But I want a lot of the recent people just gone, and you can maybe try to do new hiring programs. Once you flush the people, and some people may get rehired. That'd be fine if they're, once you flush everybody out. And let's see, my experience with the DOD agency I work with is that is definitely not the case. A lot of my coworkers were Trump supporters, and I can understand that, but there's enough evidence out there, and and people have done surveys to look at departments and correlate that to registered voters, as well as, because you also, if it's enough money, and it's sort of how it's collected, you have to disclose who is funding a campaign. I say it that way because you can hold a fundraiser that's like $5 a person to show up, that they're just handing in cash, and so they're not filing out all the paperwork that would be required if it was like handing in $500, because you have to put things like, if you donate to a campaign, you have to put your profession. You don't necessarily have to put where you work, but you'd have to go, I'm retired, or I work in sales, or some of that kind of stuff if you make campaign contributions, and identify like your name and address and whatnot. And so they've done several people done coalitions of different agencies, and find that federal government employees, and again, there are more and I'm not talking about guys in the Army or the Navy. I'm just talking about the civilian sides of the Department of Defense or other agencies. And there's obviously a lot more civilian type employees working in other agencies than they are working for the Department of Defense. So yeah, it's definitely Democrat heavy. Okay, the bandits are sent off. No casualties. You go up, plunder the bandit camp. You head back home. The other unit may be already home. Yes. Okay, you guys continue. We'll get closer to home. Well, I've gone to these topics. What are your thoughts on Ukraine? If I remember correctly, you were more supporting Ukraine side. It seems quite different strategy the new government is with for now. Um, Rip Robin Hood. Yes. Yes, exactly. Okay. Uh, I don't remember where you were from, T2. If you want to say like what country or something, I'm not like asking for your address, but if you want to give me your country. Hey, Beam Slam. I think a lot of people, including the American press, um, are misinforming the people on what Trump was trying to do. The meeting that went bad was supposed to be the press conference before the official signings of Ukraine giving the United States, and which had already been negotiated out, um, mineral rights in Ukraine. My understanding is much of the mineral rights that we were going to get, we, the U.S., were going to be in the eastern part of Ukraine, and some, maybe, not sure because I don't know the details, but I've sort of kind of heard, and from playing Hearts of Iron, know where some of the major deposits are. They're maybe in the area that is currently occupied by Russia. Okay, so what is that doing? Okay, yeah, it's Trump's way of trying to get money back for all the money we've given / loan / whatever to Ukraine. And I don't know why Zelensky went off script. I just don't know. I don't know if it's his bad understanding of English. He was supposedly told by his handlers, don't disagree with anything Trump says. Because sometimes Trump just literally, because he's not reading off the script, he just says things wrong, misspeaks, and sometimes he just doesn't know about the topic that he's talking about. And then he changes later on. So don't always worry about so he was told by his handlers, just smile and go along with whatever's said there. Doesn't mean that you have to later continue to agree with it. It just don't cause a conflict in the middle of the meeting, he was supposedly told. Obviously he did. I don't know if he thinks giving up national sovereignty, if you will, to mineral rights in Ukraine is somehow betraying Ukraine. Isn't that a bit worrying? Yes. I know there's lots of rumors that Zelensky's on drugs. I have no idea. I don't know if that's just slander or if there's, reality to it. I have no idea. I'm just bringing it up to saying that I don't know. I don't know if there's, other sort of forces. I'm sure he's under a lot of pressure, and okay. So yes, giving up those mineral rights, and which I don't know the details of it, but would probably give control as to which companies get to mine or whatever the mineral rights. What when the company extracts titanium or whatever, it doesn't matter. Extracts it from the ground. Who's getting paid the rights for it? And it was going to be the U.S. instead of Ukraine, so the government locally wasn't going to make that money. I mean, the worker who's working there locally, and a local Ukrainian worker will have a job, and of course he'll pay like income tax or whatever to the Ukrainian government, so they would make money by having well-paid jobs there, but they wouldn't get the mineral rights income, which would hurt Ukraine's economy, particularly government economy, some, yes. But what it would also do, and this is what the people that think that Trump's on the Russian side, you think Trump, America, J.D. Vance, whoever is going to want, and especially if some of the territory where the minerals are currently in Russian occupation, you think the U.S. wants to see Russian occupation then? No, there will be more stronger reasons for the U.S. to protect Ukraine if we're fucking getting money out of mineral rights in the Ukraine. You know, I don't know if the European leaders, the press is just puppets, but I don't know if the European leaders are just stupid or if they think what. And I hear rumors, but I don't know if it's true at all. That well in private that because it's a U.S. government, people like Marco Rubio, our current Secretary of State. Well, European leaders say one thing in private and another thing in public. Now I don't know what that means. Probably very true, but maybe they say they don't like Trump in public, and in private they say they hate his fucking gut. I I don't know what the reality is of statements like that, but the mineral thing would get the U.S. deeper involved into Ukraine as opposed to going, hey, what do we care? Because you remember, just, week, month, whatever, before this big new invasion happened, Biden was asked, well, what would you do if Russia invades Ukraine? Biden was, well, it depends on how big of an invasion, or, and these are words to this effect, or depends on, how long or whatever it is, blah, blah, blah. Basically giving permission that the U.S., whatever, we don't know if it's just a little incursion. So Russia had a go-ahead from the Biden administration. Now, it's probably just, hey, Biden's sharp as a tack that's a round ball or whatever. He's just an idiot that everybody, all these people that promoted Biden when he was running for re-election knew he was losing his mind. All the people knew he was, because you look at Biden speaking when he was running for re-election versus Biden speaking when he was running against Obama in the Democratic primary, before that would be 12 years earlier, approximately. And then if you look at even sharper Biden, if you look at like him back in the 90s, man, he had already, even before going, being president, he was already losing it. And the elites within the Democratic Party system knew it. And they could have easily embarrassed him enough to get him out of the race and put somebody else in. But nope, they stuck with the guy who was losing his mind and kept him in for, the 4 years, and tried to get him in for 8 years instead of like getting him out. They could have easily, what is it, the 25th Amendment, and got in Kamala Harris or something. And then, or just got him not to run again early on and got in somebody better. But no, they knew. So the Biden administration is like, well, what does America really care if, if Russia takes another chunk of Ukraine? They'd already taken Crimea, already taken parts of the Donbass. If they take another chunk, whatever. Okay. Because that isn't a vital national interest to the U.S. of what the border of Ukraine and Russia is. It is not. Sorry, it just, I am not, and I have friends, contacts in Ukraine. I'm not going to go any more than that. And I'm not joking about friends, contacts within, and I don't mean just somebody who lives in Ukraine. I'm talking more. And they trust me to not mention things. So I get fed information. I sort of wish I could hint at more, but I'm not going to, because, I do know how to keep a secret. But, and this goes back to before the big invasion, before the war starts. I'll say with one of them, and within the first, 48 hours of the Russian invasion, I was on Discord with him. Yeah, it's a him, obviously. And there were Russian missiles hitting his city while I heard the explosions in the background, or bombs, or artillery or whatever, it doesn't matter, but big explosions hitting his city, and I was hearing him in the background. So that this is, I sort of know what I'm talking about here. Biden administration, like I say, doesn't really care what goes on in Ukraine. I care about Russian aggressionism because, when George Bush the younger was president, Putin goes into Georgia. The U.S. put some naval assets, I forget exactly what it was, into the Black Sea and gets Russia to withdraw of their recent push into it. Other stuff happens under Obama. So it's that's Georgia, that's Ukraine. Was it going to be the Baltic states next? Was he going to want to push back into domination other places? Moldova, which really I think should be part of Romania, but whatever. Is he going to push into there? Why does Russia fully fund that Transnistria enclave along the river there, the Dnistria River? And they fully fund it, and it's a heavily armed camp, and it's still sitting there as a heavily armed camp. They do it because it's a playing piece on the board that they're concerned about. So I'm concerned about a Russian aggression, and I'm concerned personally about Ukraine. But I'll say that like I say, the borders of the Ukraine, as a U.S. national interest, just different than me personally, matters nothing really to the U.S. It really doesn't. But if we have mineral rights, significant mineral rights in the eastern parts of Ukraine, we're going to want to keep those eastern parts of Ukraine Russia free. Okay, whatever that means, we're gonna want that. It's not like, oh hey, whether it's Poland or Romania or whatever, wanting some territory that was once theirs, in the in the interwar period back or something like that. Well, that's all in the western parts of Ukraine. No, this was in the eastern parts of Ukraine where much of the mineral wealth is, that Trump is trying to get American rights to. That's going to be probably the, short of putting troops and a thin line of advisor, UN style type or monitors, not advisors, monitors, a few UN type, whether it's under the UN or under NATO or just under specific nations, monitors along the Russia-Ukraine border. All they're going to do is huddle into a bunker if there's another Russian offensive, because that's all they ever, UN people ever did when, particularly the PLO types that were violating the, various truces in, Lebanon area. They just sort of hunkered down and they just write reports and say, yeah, this thing happened. They weren't, and at most they would fire to defend themselves in their bunkers. So they're not really peacekeepers. They're just sort of conflict monitors. Short, and that'd be nothing. Now, if you actually station, divisions fitting in, what does it matter if Ukraine is part of NATO? If Western European countries are parking divisions of troops in Ukraine, that is unacceptable to Russia. So they're not going to accept that. So I think, Trump is trying to, and I'll get to the chat here and cover it all. Hello, Castanar. And so I think what Trump is trying to do is end the war, but he is also trying to set it up so that there are good reasons for the U.S. who can be concerned about what the eastern borders of Ukraine are, and those concerns, the cost of dealing with those concerns will be covered by the mineral wealth. Yeah, it sucks to be Ukraine, but look, Ukraine has three choices. Three choices, people. One, it can choose, and it was sort of going down that way, to be either a Russian puppet state or fully integrated into Russia, one of the two. That's one choice. That's one choice you could do. It could be a European puppet, but as I've talked to some of my European friends, and hey, any of you guys, again, and I don't know if Arno wants over on Twitch, if you want to post a Discord link to our Discord server. That's where I talk to a lot of these people. And sometimes voice chat, sometimes text chat. But talking to a lot of my European friends, they sure they're all sending in weapons to Ukraine, but they really don't have the mentality, the government people, and maybe the population mentality to really properly rearm up the Western Europeans. I'm not talking about the Poles or the Hungarians or some of the the former Soviet bloc, former Warsaw Pact people. I'm talking about the Western Europeans. They really don't have the mentality to do it. So I don't think Western Europe really can be the guarantors or protectors of Ukraine at this time. Maybe in 20 or 30 years they can get there, but this isn't something you don't fire a very good soldier, and I know he is. I'm not going to go beyond that. You don't fire him for political reasons. And again, I'm not going to go beyond any of that, but that is why he was fired from the army, for political reasons. If you're and as far as I know, it's not not like being very radical. I mean, if you're a Green Party or a Communist Party person, you think he's radical. But if you're an American Republican, you don't think he's radical. It's just as a perspective. Fire him from the army if you're really serious about building up an army. You get the soldiers who are good. And I mean good, experienced soldiers. I mean very experienced soldiers. And I'm not going to go beyond saying that. Some of you who are around know who I'm talking about. Thanks, Arno. And I just don't want to. I don't want to. Even docs. And obviously it's a he talks about it, but just he'll let him, if you ever talk to him, tell his story. I don't want to tell his story, but you don't have that mentality of cleaning out those types of people if you're looking to really seriously have an army. So it's going to take years, if not decades, to build up a European defense mentality to face off Russia. Or three, be an American puppet if you're Ukraine. Those are your three choices, because Russia isn't going to let you be neutral. You can't, hey, I want to be Switzerland and just be neutral. Or, hey, I want to be India and sort of play off the major powers off each other. Because India is a freaking subcontinent and is huge, and it can do that. It's not, and it obviously has geographical, the Himalayas as a, defense against a lot. Obviously, main worry is Pakistan border. But, from China or Russia, it's well defended. So it can do that stuff. Ukraine can't. It has the three choices: Russia, Europe, or the U.S. And I don't think Europe would be a successful choice. I may be wrong on that, but I'm not wrong on the idea that it has three choices. It cannot go it alone. It cannot, sustain itself in the face of what would be continuing Russian aggression. So there isn't some sort of idealistic world. Oh, hey, no. So you gotta suck it up to one of those big powers, and it's probably the U.S. or Russia. And you gotta suck it up, and you got to admit to yourself that you are a puppet of one of those powers, and that's your choice. And all these, there had been a bunch of sort of anti-U.S. videos by some Ukrainians, but I did like their recent sort of hey, I saw the one for the Hawk missile batteries. It's still, all the missiles had USMC on it, United States Marine Corps. Thanking the U.S. people for what we sent them and whatnot. So yeah, they more so, the French, the Germans, the British, they could go say F you to the American, strategic alliances and defense policies and throw up, tariffs against America or boycott. No, Ukraine doesn't have that option. Ukraine couldn't, put off tariffs against American products or something because you can't, unless you're going to go down the Russian path, they've got to be a puppet or they're gone. They have to acknowledge it. It maybe sucks, but that's your only way. Unless you want to go down the Russian path, and I know there's people doing it. Okay, lots of propaganda. Going back up to ZZ, lots of propaganda with both sides in war. Absolutely. So I think that was as to the possible drug use. So I'm just saying possible. I have no idea. I'll scroll to this thing. It's not scrolling easily. Okay. But being slammed, Zelensky should just submit to the new master. When he did, when he did, he was bullied and, total crazy shit show. Yes, because he was following the previous U.S. master, the Biden administration. I want to say administration because obviously Biden, like I say, was there, but not much there. So yeah, and so with the administration going, he just needs to do it. Remember, Ukraine was promised to guarantee by the U.S. and Russia to give up nuclear weapons, and that would happen. Yes, and the U.S. is now betraying Ukraine. Yes and no. You're right, there was an agreement. One, that agreement was never ratified by the U.S. Senate. Everybody out there, world leaders, I know you're all listening to me. I know you're not, but you should. Because, maybe you don't want to. Maybe somebody should clip all of my good statements and give them to the world leaders so they don't have to watch all my gameplay footage. Anything that, you can have memorandums of understanding, but those are just toilet paper. You can do that. But any treaty, any legally binding treaty, again, let me say this. Any legally binding treaty in the U.S., whether it's signed by the president, the vice president, the secretary of state, Sam the butcher, whoever it is, whoever signs that, the only way is it ever legally binding on the U.S. if it's ratified by the United States Senate. Wilson establishes and commits America to the League of Nations, and it's really Wilson's baby. The U.S. Senate says, fuck no. We're not doing this shit. So the U.S. never joined the League of Nations. Even though Wilson signed his pen on things, I'm sure he did, I just don't know. This is when he was still actually mentally there. But it doesn't matter what the president, vice president, secretary of state, your local ambassador, any treaty, any legally binding treaty needs United States senatorial approval. Otherwise, it just might as well be toilet paper as to its validity. Yeah, and obviously there's all kinds of memorandums of understanding and, okay, let's establish the procedure that, France, if they want to extradite a U.S., somebody from the U.S., or if the U.S. wants to extradite somebody, from France to stand trial, these are the phone numbers you call, the office you're supposed to talk to. There's probably a lot of procedural stuff like that would never get to the, senatorial. They're not treaties. They're just, understanding of how to operate. That is different. Two, yes, the U.S. betrayed the understanding there when we did not do anything about Crimea. Too late. If we had done something about Crimea within the first 90 days, fine, but we didn't. So yes and no on that thing. Okay, we get to T2. If the treaty would have meant a quasi-commitment to Ukraine, why doesn't Trump want it on paper? Well, Trump wants the T2. Trump wants the mineral understanding on paper. He was going to get Zelensky to sign it that day, and that was the press conference before the signing, and it all blew up. from what I've heard, is more or less just what you said, but Zelensky wants formal guarantees on top of it. Well, again, formal guarantees, and maybe the U.S. Senate would, but probably would not commit the U.S. to war or anything on top for Russia and Ukraine. It's one thing to like send money; it's another thing to send weapons. Whoever's paying for them, the U.S. is paying for the U.S. weapons. It's another thing to say that we would somehow intervene, some sort of guarantees. And I don't think we're going to do that. Best friends with Zelensky, me, no, nah, or who I'm talking to, God, no. But yeah, I do have people, and a few people around here, don't mention names, do know who I'm talking about, and have some idea of what it is. Okay, Castanar, Putin has stated many times he wants to reform the USSR. Absolutely, he does, and I'm worried about that because why the fuck did Napoleon invade Russia? I don't care what's stated, in any real thing. I've read a bunch about that time period. I think it simply comes down to, and you maybe what the hell does Napoleon and Russia have to do with anything? But I think it comes down to that Napoleon built the greatest military machine on the planet. It was sitting along the Channel coast, and then the British sink the French fleet, and the Grande Armée, he knows, I can't do anything with this Grand Army, the Grande Armée. All my books on it are all in boxes right now. And so then he decides to take it east, to beat up on Russia with it. But what strategic, and I'm not saying, you go to war with Russia, you don't have to invade Russia. Russia will come to you, and you can defeat it there. You don't have to, and I know there's, I've talked to, history professors and read books and watched documentaries. Napoleon, from his previous experience, if you get and occupy the enemy's capital, they're sort of kind of compelled to realize that if you can't defend your capital, you've got to make some sort of settlement. That's what he did with Austria. It didn't mean that Austria completely capitulated to Napoleon. No, because they would have fought on. But there was a end of conflict treaty after Napoleon occupies Vienna, and I forget which battle happens after that he fights and whatnot. And so the goals of Putin, yes, I agree. I think he wants to reform fully what had been the USSR. Does he want to reform the Russian Empire, which would mean Finland? Does he want to reform? Does he feel the need to have a buffer state, a Warsaw Pact? You see, successful aggression, and I look through history, whether we look at Hitler, we look at Napoleon, successful aggression not, had the French did a serious counter maneuver to Germany occupying the Rhineland, my understanding was Hitler's orders were to immediately fall back, do not confront the French forces. Had they done that, had they stood up over Austria, had they stood up over Czechoslovakia, there probably still would have been a World War II, but it would have looked very, very different and maybe much better for the people of Europe. So if I believe now Putin is stopped, if the fighting, and I'll get to folk and other high folk, I'll get to some of the other things here. If we stop the fighting now, Putin is going to try to reform, rearm, reindustrialize, improve the army production, military production. Yeah, but I don't think he's going to immediately start either in on Ukraine more, or in on the Baltic states more. I think he knows he will need 5-10 years of rebuilding, and people don't live forever. Um, you know, I know people. Oh, Putin is just a doppelganger. People they look at photos of earlier and later Putin, and oh no, that's a and there may be used body doubles once in a while, but they just keep at replacing body doubles forever or something. I don't know, but I think he's stopped. His aggression is stopped. Whatever happens with this war, unless there's a major victory by the Russians, he is stopped. And that's what I'm concerned with. Okay, Castanar, those mineral rights are the guarantees Zelensky was trying to get, and didn't President Trump float peace proposals during the campaign that would have had the EU troops on the ground? I know. I don't think Trump has ever suggested EU troops in Ukraine. I could be wrong, but I don't think he has. I think that's come more from Keir Starmer and others. But Trump has been stating no NATO membership. Whether there's eventually EU membership, I don't know. I had asked a bit early in the stream, Robin Hood would still be alive now. Yes. Earlier, yes, I get that. Okay, in case whatever Trump signs is worthless or it's pointless. Okay, well, no, it isn't. Hello, hungry man. Just seeing your chat. I know you said hello a while ago, but fortunately, others have said hello back. It isn't worthless because one, and I don't know the wording of the mineral rights agreement. One, it might get ratified by the Senate, but I don't know that there were any guarantees of doing anything in that mineral rights treaty or agreement or whatever. Meaning, the point isn't that they give us mineral rights, then we agree to defend them. No, the point is they give us mineral rights, and if Russia takes away the territory, is Russia going to continue with the mineral rights? Now, maybe Russia would be smart and go, hey, yeah, we're taking the territory, but we'll still let you have the mineral rights, so don't get upset with us, America. That might be smart of them, but they probably wouldn't do that. The idea is that because the U.S., when I say we, would face a financial loss if that territory was taken away from Ukraine, there are reasons, not necessarily that the U.S. will pledge to defend, but would be reasons for, in the meantime, continuing to support rearmament, once the peace treaty happens, rearmament of Ukraine. And if there's a future invasion, it might be real reasons, because Trump is talking like one of the negotiating points is that, at least from the U.S. side, we'll take off some of the Russian sanctions. We could reimpose sanctions, that we would do so. And of course, there would be reasons for the U.S. to, I'm talking like 10 years, long after Trump's gone. There'd be really strong reasons for the U.S. to, if there's a new war breakout, to supply Ukraine with lots of good weaponry. Not like super high-tech weaponry, but anti-tank missiles of the latest model or similar things like that. There would be reasons for the U.S. to care about Ukraine. Okay, let me continue on to try to catch up with the chat here. At the very least, it would hold great risk for the Ukraine. I don't know. I mean, Ukraine's got to make a decision here. Taking capitals is secondary to Napoleon. In the 1805 campaign, Murat was bullied for taking Vienna without orders because Napoleon wanted to draw Russian army closer. Yeah, that very well could be Beam Slam. I've read of that a bit, but I've more read. I wish I could look over in my right here where at home my books would be on the shelf, but they're in boxes right now. A few biographies that included people that were in that campaign. But also, I've read much more dealing with the Peninsula campaign or the British campaigns, which include things like down in Italy um, and whatnot. So I don't know 1905 that well. Uh, let's see, what are we looking at here? Okay. Why are you worried about Putin being stuck? Don't either you misheard me or I misspoke. I don't know. Why are you worried about being stuck? I don't get that. Please clarify somehow. And maybe again, I don't know. I can misspeak.
My liege! Advance!
Um,
Heavy infantry!
okay, maybe I misheard. Not sure now. You said something about Putin and that you were worried that he is in that position. Well, I'm worried that Putin is aggressing against his neighbors. That's what I'm worried about. Because it is useful for America. I don't know if you realize this, but during the entire existence of the Soviet Union, or no, so let me rephrase that. Since the Soviet Union occupied the Baltic states, the U.S. maintained official embassies for the Baltic states in Washington, D.C. So, yeah, so, I mean, obviously they were independent for a while under with the Soviet Union existing. But so that the U.S. has steadily maintained that the Baltic states are not are independent nations, and I'm worried that they are NATO nations, and that I believe, well, there is evidence, not just I believe, there is evidence that Putin was working to destabilize the Baltic states. I think he was going to use the Hitler playbook because in all the Baltic states, to my knowledge, there are large Russian minorities that he may have needed to intervene to protect the Russian minorities in the Baltic states from persecution or some bullshit. Or maybe reality, but either way. And so that could be a serious problem. And where you have ambiguities like that you would, if they're, being part of NATO, and if Russia invades, is that going to trigger what he was doing in what they call it the little green men, or the green army men, basically Russian volunteers, Russian soldiers that were volunteering, going in uniforms that did not have any Russian patches on, and that kind of things that he was doing. And that's the type of war that, whether it's a Trump who might be seen, and I don't want to make this Democrat or Republican, because it can sort of be also the Republican. If you have a Trump that seems like America first and won't get involved in foreign wars, or if you see somebody that looks like Biden and looks weak, because I don't think Putin would have invaded if he knew what was going to happen, with how much support, not just giving a few, because all that really happened with, what happened when they shot down the Dutch airliner? Oh, some sanctions or some bullshit. What happened? And when it was clear evidence that Russia was supporting separatists, we'll call it that for the moment, in the Donbass, some sanctions. What happened when Putin takes Crimea? some sanctions. Okay, I'll put up with whatever sanctions, including, total blockade, no, natural gas going to the West or whatever. But, he might think that that's worth it. I don't think he would have done it if he'd realized what the military support the Ukrainians were going to get. I could be wrong. I don't have a crystal ball, don't have a secret Kremlin, insider telling me this stuff, but I don't think he would have done it. So if you get what looks to be a weak president who might not do anything about it, or you get what looks to be an American first or American isolationist type president, especially when it comes to war things, you might think that, oh, well, if we go into the Baltic states, NATO won't do anything unless, because this goes back to, again, if you watch my old series, I know a few of you from the olden days, looking at when France has a treaty with Czechoslovakia to defend Czechoslovakia if Germany attacks. France is unwilling to go to war over Czechoslovakia if Britain doesn't also come into the war. Not that Britain was necessarily going to, be responsible for most of the ground fighting, and probably France would have just hidden behind the Maginot Line or something like that instead of trying to march into German territory. But it could have been a war that was a defense that, whether you defend with Belgium too, a defensive war on the Western Front, and the British being required to close the sea lanes. Now whatever happened with Italy and potentially, trains coming through the Brenner Pass, a neutral Italy with trains coming through the Brenner Pass supplying Germany that way, that would be another question. But the idea that, Britain to help deal with Germany's naval threat, without Britain, France was unwilling to do it. Well, would core NATO, we'll just call it that, of Germany, France, Britain, core European NATO, Germany, France, and Britain, would they be willing to go to war over the Baltic states if the U.S. said we're not doing anything with it? Would they? I don't know. And it may depend on who the political leaders of those countries are at that time. And so it could be something that spirals out of control if it's, the Baltic states. So that's what I'm worried about. And that's also what Putin's worried about, is that the U.S. and others are in the Baltic states. Let's see what Beamslam. The Baltic states were not in NATO. I bet they would have been Russia by now. Probably so, Beamslam. Probably so. I definitely think that Ukrainian revolution, and sorry I don't remember the names, they got rid of the pro-Russian leader. I think that was a CIA sponsored revolution. No, I think it had lots of local support. I don't know what's going on or I don't know if there's outside forces going on with what's going on in Georgia right now. Georgia has a pro-Russian government, but that's got in power and has sort of messed with things. A supposedly sort of independent candidate, I don't remember the names. I know I've heard them. And I've seen recent reports as, last few months. But the Georgian people are very pro wanting to be in the EU and wanting to be part of the West and not wanting to become a puppet. And so far, most of the armed forces are staying loyal to the legal government of Georgia. So, and you could easily, if what was going on in Ukraine wasn't going on in Ukraine, you could easily see if there was some sort of, whether truly locally initiated uprising or a CIA plotted uprising in Georgia, you could easily see the Georgian government calling in Russia to help stabilize the situation, and would be just another step down the path of Georgia being reintegrated into Russia. This is a concern. And this is why I'm concerned, not just, it's not just, oh, it's somehow Ukraine is magical or whatever. It's just, when and where does it stop? One success will lead to the next. Will lead to the next one after that. Oh, we got our church built. Good. Okay. Now, over here, we're at 49%. Hopefully, we're going to, with our church level here, get above 50%, which will get all these houses, because right now we only have 5 families. We need a few more families here, because I want to expand this. We need, got church access, we need fire and fuel. Okay, because we don't have a lot of people here. They're not, okay, we have firewood down there. Yes, we have firewood down there, but we'll, well, we got 6 months. We don't need that. What we need is maybe a couple of people going and collecting that. We have been building the church. Another person sort of managing the dwindling food supplies, so we are in February. And what does our game look like here? Okay, that's full. So let's throw a family working here as well. We do have enough food to get through the winter, but nice to always have extra. Would have been easier for Trump to continue the way Biden handled the situation, but increase much more. Okay, well, here's again, and I've stated this before, and obviously not everyone watches everything I do, but my assessment was Trump was going to go into negotiations with Putin. Didn't matter what the European leaders thought, didn't matter what the Ukrainians thought. It was very much going to be Trump, Putin. Trump was going to negotiate a settlement, realizing that he couldn't just like go, oh, hey, status quo. Trump was going to want a partial Russian withdrawal. But I think Trump was going to offer something like international, including U.S., or U.S., but generally push international recognition and try to force the Ukrainians to recognize that Crimea is part of Russia. Maybe those original Russian majority regions that, before the major invasion that were Russian controlled or whatever, breakaway provinces, those and maybe some other territory would go to Russia, and Ukraine would have to sign on the dotted line to the new border. There wasn't going to be reparations from Russia. That's one of the things Zelensky's asked for. It's not going to happen. And so Putin could take to the Russian people, hey, I've secured international recognition of, Crimea and whatnot. And so you could have a partial win there. If Putin agreed to this, then there would have been 2 options for Trump, would have offered. The Europeans and Ukrainians were going to have to get on board with the deal, or if they chose not to, the U.S. was out. Europe could fund it. Europe can handle this. I'm just out. There's no more American money. Whether if somebody else is paying for them, we might sell weaponry because Trump likes to sell U.S.-made products. But it wasn't going to be one of these things where the U.S. officially pays for the weapons that then get delivered to Ukraine. No, somebody else was going to have to pay for them. So either the leaders were going to have to agree to Trump's proposal, or they were going to have to take over the show. If Putin didn't come to an agreement with Trump that Trump thought was reasonable, whatever that was, and it was definitely Putin was going to have to give up things, because that's my understanding of the situation now. It isn't just give Putin what he wants. If Putin didn't agree to it, Trump probably would have doubled down on support for Ukraine. He probably would have not put U.S. troops or anything like that, but would have increased support to and or harsher sanctions against Russia. And so Trump isn't going into this negotiation with a weak hand. Trump isn't going in to go, hey, we're leaving. Can we have a peace treaty? Oh, well, what will you agree to? No, it's, hey, we want a peace treaty. If you don't give us this peace treaty, and again, I'll tell the story. Maybe you've all heard it before, but this gives good insight to Trump. When he was trying to build, I think it was Trump Towers in New York City. In New York City, when you own like a building, you own not just that building that, let's say, is 5 stories tall. You own airspace above it, above that building, to like take it to 10 stories. Now, if you want to build a really tall building above your allotted airspace, you have to buy airspace from nearby buildings. So this way you don't have, and they may change the rules in the future, but this way you don't have too many huge buildings there. So you'll do this. And so this way there'll be some really tall buildings, and then there'll be a bunch of, medium height for New York City buildings around the area. So Trump went to his architect, had him design Trump, I think it's Trump Towers, but it was one, because he owns several buildings in New York City. And some of them are a bit more historical, but I'm talking one that he was going to build. So I think it's Trump Towers. But if anybody wants to correct me, please do. He went with his architect, designed the building that he wanted. And then he told the architect, build me a building to the airspace height that I own at that location, but make it as fucking, I'm putting the fucking in, ugly as possible. Build me a model. And he called a meeting of the owners of the building around him, where he wanted to build this, tear down what was there and build this new building. He says, this is the building I want. I want to buy your airspace. If you don't sell me your airspace at a reasonable price, it wasn't for free, but it was a reasonable price, I will, and he shows the other model, I will build this building, and I will build it. I will pay for it and build it. And your nice buildings will be next to this ugly building. They sold him the airspace because he was probably paying good money for it, and they knew that he would build the very ugly building that would make their property less valuable. So I am sure, just because of that and some other stories that I've heard about Trump is going in with I want a peace settlement. If you give me this peace settlement, here's what I'll give you. Things like Ukraine not in NATO, U.S. recognize Crimea. We'll push the Ukrainians to recognize Crimea. If you don't, these are the things we will do if you don't agree to this agreement. I don't know what the sticks were, carrots and sticks. So I don't know I don't personally claim to know what they were, but it was probably increased support for Ukraine as part of it. Maybe some other sanctions that he thought would really hurt. I don't know. But so I am sure Trump's negotiations with Putin are real carrots, real sticks, and he means it. And so the reason I think the war has continued this long is because I think the Biden administration and a lot of the European leaders believed, I don't know if they still believe it, but believed that this war could bring down the Putin regime. Too many casualties, cost too much, there'll be a coup or whatever, and get rid of Putin. I think this is from the European players. And if you look at Macron, I think very much because if you don't know, France and Russia are fighting in North Africa, sometimes directly. Okay, French special forces are fighting Wagner Group people in North Africa. Mercenary Russian sponsored mercenaries, and some proxies and other stuff are going on. And right now, France has been losing. So there are reasons that the European leaders want to bring down the Putin government. I don't think that's going to happen. That's not my analysis of it, but God, I'm not, privy to all of the, whatever the U.S. is picking up on chatter between leaders in Russia or whatnot. I don't know. Maybe there's a coup tomorrow. But I don't think this war is going to bring Putin down. So that war goal, look at like in the Hearts of Iron terms, is, change a government, fight a war, and the goal is to, put in a puppet government or whatever equivalent of. Wouldn't be a puppet government, just be a non-Putin government. Punish, don't ever do this again, or we'll collapse your government too, kind of thing. Not that it's going to be a pro-Western government, just a government that doesn't push into Ukraine or other places, because bad things will happen. I think that's why the war has gone on so long. But, let's see wouldn't it, okay, need more people to. Okay, yeah, lots of hope. Trump also used the stick on Putin. He was after all aggressors who can end the war tomorrow if he wanted. Yeah, but if you don't have a united front behind Trump, see, this is the problem. Putin would love to peel off U.S. support for Crimea. I mean, not Crimea, for Ukraine. Get the U.S. off. So if it looks like there are major policy differences between the U.S. and the Europeans, that's only going to encourage Putin, people. The Defense Department has announced within the last few days that all arms shipments to the Ukraine have stopped. And those are obviously our U.S. arms shipments have stopped, and obviously the U.S. is paying for it. So we have stopped our arms shipments to Ukraine right now. Don't you think Putin likes that idea? And so European leaders, European press should all be 100% behind Trump. There shouldn't be daylight between them on Russian issues. I mean, they can fight over tariffs or free speech in Europe or whatever like that, but they should all be standing shoulder to shoulder, patting Trump on his back and saying we're 100% behind him. Now, they could, when the announced agreement that Trump, negotiates, they could at that point go, this is unacceptable. We're not going to accept this. And they would need to say what points in the agreement that they don't accept, change this or change that. If it's just a few points. But if it's overall so terrible, well, then they can go it alone. But right now, they should be 100% behind Trump on the Russian issue. Whatever it is, they fucking shouldn't have had that after Zelensky literally gets kicked out of the White House and told to go away. There's been at least one attempt by him to go back to the White House and have another, not a press conference, but another meeting. Supposedly the White House not only wants him to agree to whatever the treaty is going to be, but also wants him to publicly apologize for his behavior. But that next day or two or whatever it was, where they had the Europeans with all their flags behind them, no U.S. flag and the EU flag, but all their nation flags and the Ukrainian flag, meeting with Zelensky as European unity for it. That was the stupidest move. And it's not like, oh my God, they shouldn't, they should bow down to Trump because Trump's so great. No, not at all. God, no, I'm not that type of person. It's just you don't want to show division in the middle of a war. Hello, MMDB. So let me continue with the chat over on Twitch, which is not showing up on YouTube like it used to. And I may need to change that plugin. Okay. It's the stick. Yes. Okay. Yeah, so let's continue here. We're trying to, what I'm trying to do, big goals here, is I want to get this, this stone deposit working, because I need lots more stone. I'm totally done with stone in this province or region or whatever, and have very little 16 and a little bit in warehouses here. So I need a lot more stone to build things. I shall call it the 9 months war. Oh, okay. I think I know what you're talking about. Now, in this game, I don't know if you realize it, periodically you get taxed by the king or whatever, royal taxes. So periodically, I know it will knock down our approval by 6 points, but we're at 81 for this province, and that's what I'm looking at here. So we can take the knockdown. We won't constantly be doing the 10% tax, and I think it's 10% off of. Let's make sure we get to the right area. It's still showing us this other Winfield where we want sidelets or whatever. Here. Yeah, we're at 81%, but it's off this. I think it's like, so it'd be like 62 or 63 money off of this. But unlike the first Trump administration, with the U.S. government not under the control of Trump, because it was not, clothing supply. We have, I need a tannery. That was another thing, I think. Did I need stone for a tannery? Here we are. No, but I did need planks, so now we'll put in a tannery. So I'm trying to get this. So I've got an economy here going where this deep mine here has a rich deposit of iron ore. They then take the iron ore up to here and the bloomery and turn it into iron ingots. The smithy then turns it into tools. Right now there's, I guess, not enough, so we need more people working over here to supply them with enough iron. And then this province here trades, and I probably should go back to, what were we doing for bread? Lots of bread, lots of grain, lots of flour, well, some flour. So buy some flour over here. So what we're doing here, at this pack station here, go to advance. I did send roof tiles for tools. I think we will go and send bread for tools. So they trade bread for tools. And then over here, I sell the tools, the excess tools, for gold here. So we have this sort of economy running. We also have over here, they've got a huge abundance, 1,400 money. They are, what is it? Pack station is somewhere. These trees are, oh, it's somewhere here. That's the tannery. Well, this is the main trading post, and they sell fish here, which gets the money. Where's the pack state? Oh, it's on this side here. Oh, good go. Around. Oh, here. Here at this pack station, they're trading fish for ale. So they don't grow their own barley, but we're keeping the tavern supplied. Can you do a walkthrough of your city and some gardens, please? Yes, no, we can do that. So I'm trying to set up, some specialization here. And this, we need 3 level 3 plots to grow up. What are we needing? More clothing and food stalls. Okay, so right now a lot of fish. Not enough variety. We have over here, which we can help with this. The well. Where's the hunting cabin? It's somewhere around here. Here it is. Hunting cabin. We'll get some meat coming in. Deer or rabbit or whatever. So hopefully we'll get, because they had been trading roof tiles for the tools. Now we'll get the bread to get more bread over here. So we're trying to do some of this and build up. You want to see the big city, I guess? Okay. Since it said city as opposed to town, but I don't know. All right. And right now, outside my house, up in my secret mountain base, I know some already know this, but we do have a few new people here. It looks very much like this, as in snow on the ground. Very much like sort of snow in shadier areas and off the main walkways and roads and whatnot. And some snow still up in the trees. Well, there's an oxen going somewhere. So, as I was saying before, with the first Trump administration, the U.S. government wasn't under Trump's control, and the European leaders were just going to wait him out. But I think they're coming to realize, let's walk in the back here, coming to realize that he's a little too tall for that archway, that the Trump administration isn't going anywhere. And so there's a goat there. That's a goat. And very likely, and it's looking real easy, it looks like the goat is stuck in the wall. Right now, it's looking like J.D. Vance, because especially that, for Americans, I know European television and European media is maybe spitting a different picture. I realize that talking to, again, some of my European friends, that some of them like Trump, but a lot of the family and friends and others hate him, because I think mostly they're getting, not that they would love him if they got the truth, not saying that at all, but I think he's being misrepresented in a lot of the media. At least that's what I hear from people. But that Zelensky meeting and how J.D. Vance handled it was really, really popular with, and they've been done some polling on this, with the majority of American voters. Not just of Republicans or whatever, but they like this. And yes, remember, listen, reading Arno here, remember, gamer, put up those wildlife cameras like you said. Arno wants me to put some wildlife cameras up, and I don't know if the one that I have here works. I do have one that was my dad's. Because, like I say, I live in a small town here in my secret mountain base. Uh, is this? Oh, this is a brew. This is the brewery house. This is a house as a brewery. You see them brewing some beer. They're wheeling the barrels out. I haven't seen a while. I mean, in the last few months, I've been going back and forth between California and Arizona. We can walk over to the churchyard here. I haven't seen it in a while, but I definitely had in my backyard, packing my trash, javelinas, which are their own sort of species thing, very indigenous to North America, meaning split off when the continent split off. But they're sort of pig-like. They're not a subspecies of pig. They're their own thing, and they're small for boars. Supposedly, because I looked them up here, supposedly 2 or 3 people a year get killed by them. Often like a jogger or something that will jog in amidst some of them and, get hurt. A bunch more people get hurt seriously, meaning, stitches, hospital, whatever, but very few people die, but a few a year die. So those in my backyard, I've yelled at them, but mostly they just look at me and go back to whatever they're doing. But talking to one of my neighbors here, just 2 houses over, and he's been seeing a mountain lion in his sort of backyard area. I don't know if right now with the winter if it's coming out or what it's doing. Now that is a problem. More of a problem for one of my neighbors, or 2 of my neighbors have little kids. Little kids are definitely a danger from a mountain lion. They would only attack me if there was like, I startled them in that fight or flight, thing kicks in and it feels it needs to attack. Normal for mountain lions. Oh, also another thing, they will attack grown humans, especially again when they're jogging or running, because they look like prey. If they're especially like running away from them, they will. So the clothing stall selling cloth there. It looks like. I'm a ghost. So yeah, every bat cave should have wildlife cams for the mountain. So I might, probably not this trip, but I might set it up. Probably mostly I'd get footage of the neighbor's cat coming in the area. But yeah, Vance should just stop talking. He would probably be doing fine. No, Vance did very well at that. At least for the American people, he did well. At least that would be my interpretation of it. I think we already walked down the street, so. Cat footage. Yeah, but big cat, small cat, yeah. Built over here. I think I built over here. Yeah. We still have a corpse problem. Because we fought a battle over here a while ago. Let's see. No, we're doing good here. Nonsense and bullshit.
I only sell the finest wares in all the land.
Well, I think the current most likely next president of the United States is J.D. Vance. Now, 2 years from now, my opinion very well may change. Either because I think, and I'm not saying what I want. I'm saying what I think the voters. Yeah, okay. The king took a bunch of money. I don't care if Americans like it. Well, you don't have to. I'm not offended if you don't like it. Probably most Europeans wouldn't like most American Marines. That would probably be a true statement. But the European leadership needs to, realize that America, for the next 12 years, it's very likely to be Trump and then Vance. And yeah, and again, I'm not, I hope a different Republican wins the Republican primary. Don't big cat. Why? Vance is very popular. Vance is a part of a group of people that I think it was Brett Weinstein. If you look at one of the videos he did with one of the YouTubers that sits down and has like 2-hour chats with people, I forget the name. If you ever want to hit me up on Discord, I could look it up later. If you want it there, I could maybe find the interview. And he talks about a private event at a, basically like somebody's house, as in the somebody who has billions of dollars, had a bunch of people over that were part of this group of, shall we say, modern thinkers. Not the traditional like Ted Cruz right, the traditional American Republican right, but sort of modern thinkers that a lot of them had been Democrats. And not just like elected officials. These were other, and this person was very impressed. Brett Weinstein was very impressed with meeting these people. And I'm forgetting the details again. If you really want to know more of the story, I can get you the link some other time. I think there's a major shift. The old Republican Party, the Republican Party of free trade, the Republican Party of Lindsey Graham. If there's a war, we're in it. There's a war out there. We're joining it. It is gone. So it's gone. ZZ. It's Republican Party in some ways is going back to its pre-Cold War roots. I will say this. What happened to the old school Republicans? You mean like Dick Cheney? He joined the Democratic Party. Supported Kamala Harris. His daughter, the now former Congresswoman, she joined the Democratic Party. All of a sudden, they just seem to be gone. Yeah. Okay, people. Of elected leaders, the most hated party in America was the Republicans. Elected leaders. I'm talking about the voters. I'm talking about the elected leaders, and particularly the national leaders. The Republicans were the most hated party in America. Of course, all the Democrats hated them because they were the Democrats. The Republican voters hated them because they would always come and give us great promises of being so conservative, and I'm gonna veto the whatever bill. They're not gonna be, oh, you mean they'll shut down the government? And they always caved. So we hated them too. They were just better than the Democrats, so we voted for them. And whenever there was a primary, somebody would come out talking big. I'm a conservative, blah, blah. I'm going to defend your rights, your blah, 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 blah. I'm not going to fund we elect you. You do. It seemed like to me 95%, and talked for hours, new congressmen, okay? Just a few out here out in California, back in the past, back in the 80s and 90s. And I don't mean just met and shook hands with a bunch, bunch of people. I met Ollie North, if you know who he is, and a few senators, more congressmen I knew. sat around and talked, and not just sometimes alone with them, because of my job working. Other times, around with 4 or 5 other people, including like 2 or 3 congressmen. So I knew these people. Okay, this isn't just somebody talking in his basement about it. I knew these people. I knew people that worked in the White House back in the Reagan days and the Bush days. I knew people that moved from the Bush vice presidency, Bush the elder now, vice presidency, into the Bush White House. Didn't like know those people well, but knew them, had phone numbers. They wouldn't want me to call and bother them unless there was something important. But I had phone numbers back in the day. So I knew these people. It seemed like they'd always talk really good games in the primary, and we always knew, which was fine, that they'd sort of soften their stance in the general election. But it seemed like once they got in, somebody would remove their backbone. They would never shut the government down. If the Democrats shut the government down, we would all stand up and cheer. No, they would always cave. Always cave. Cave to, the Democrats only got 3/4 of what they wanted. So, and I'll say personally, one of the things that I've changed on from my college days to post-college days to what I now believe is trade barriers, trade tariffs, because sometimes you can just block importation. It's not a tariff. Because free trade was presented to me as a good thing, and that protectionism would protect out-of-date industries like the American steel industry, which was mostly a pre-war World War II era steel industry, where Germany's was a post-war, more modern steel industry. So it would protect out-of-date businesses, and it would sort of protect, it would sort of stagnate things as well, not just in like protection types, but stagnate innovation, stagnate, union control over things, because a lot of the major industries were controlled so much by unions that without foreign competition, this would just continue to become more and more a rigid thing. I was told that, no, they can't forever subsidize German steel. No, they've subsidized German steel forever. So subsidies on exported German steel has not left us. And so so I am now, and I agree that too rigid of a protectionism, notice the word too, meaning is a bad thing. But we have to have American industry. We cannot rely upon Americans are just going to innovate better than the Chinese. Sorry, China will just somehow flood enough steel or enough whatever into America to destroy a particular industry. Germany may not be trying to destroy American steel industry. I don't think they are, but they're going to subsidize their steel exports just because it's in their national interest. Germany probably wouldn't make enough steel to satisfy the world's needs, but so it's not trying to do that. But China, I do think, is trying to destroy steel industries around the world, and as a means of economic warfare. And they're allowed to do it. I don't. Unlike the apologists, and I think they're fucking apologists for Japan. Oh no, Americans put on, oil embargoes and steel embargoes on Japan, and they got their allies, the British and the Dutch, who had lost their homeland. Basically Dutch run, but sort of puppet of Britain. The Dutch East Indies, to put on oil embargoes on Japan. U.S. pressure. I don't think it took much pressure. I mean, the Dutch exile government might have been able to get more money for their oil or sell more oil to Japan than not. But they knew that even if U.S. was being not entering the war in Europe at the time or in Asia, they knew that there was so much more advantage, arms sales and other things than they would ever get deciding to buck the Americans' attempt at trying to economically pressure Japan to make a settlement in China. Um, I do not believe that any of that justifies a military, a military attack as justification. So economic warfare is economic warfare, meaning tariffs, subsidies, and not blockades. I'm not like saying, and the U.S. wasn't sitting off Japanese ports, stopping trade from coming in. We did do a blockade of Cuba, but only to during the Cuban Missile Crisis, as far as I know, I may be wrong, but only to blockade ships from coming in without the U.S. coming on board and inspecting to make sure that there were no missiles or missile components or jet aircraft or probably other things like that. But meaning if it was, people trying to send in a ship to get a shipment of sugar, or tobacco or whatever from Cuba and delivering some, minor electronic, hair dryers or something, that was being let through. It was a blockade for military weapons of the Cuban Missile Crisis. And that was potentially an act of war. Because it was a military blockade. It was, you stop or we shoot your ship. You can turn around and go home, or you let us inspect, or we shoot your ship. And which is, of course, an act of war. I'm not talking about blockades. I'm talking about, saying, like Canada right now is saying they're basic functionally because alcohol sold in Canada, my understanding is, only gets sold through government-owned stores, meaning they're not private businesses, and so they've ordered their stores not to sell American alcohol. Fine, I'm sure it upsets our alcohol manufacturers, but I'm not upset. I don't care. If they don't want to buy our alcohol, fine. So economic warfare is economic warfare. And so China is doing it. So I've changed to be much more of a protectionist. So the old Republicans' idea of fair trade doesn't really work. It is not a good idea. It's a sort of a capitalist principle, but the other players, it might sort of kind of work if we looked at it from if everything was totally even playing ground, it would be fine. But even if we look at some currencies are much cheaper and labor is much cheaper in other countries, it might still work, but with subsidies and other nations doing their own tariffs, and companies basically can, for 30, 40 years, run at a loss because the government's going to support them. They're truly running at a loss. You just can't do free trade. It just won't work. The world isn't a peaceful, ready enough place that we can just do free trade. So I've become much more of a protectionist. And so the old school Republican don't like that. Let's go back up the thing. We shall see. I meant the old, excuse me, old American based on reasons and having friends in the world. I'll get back to that in a moment. Let's read. In regards to Cheney, that was from Personal Matters. Trump ended his daughter's political career. Well, his daughter attacked Trump. I mean, she went on that J6 committee thing. The current Republican Party is but a fraction of the popularity of the Reagan-Bush senior Republican Party. The new Republican Party hasn't managed to win a consecutive presidential term alone in 3 years in a row. Little alone 3. Well, no. Bush had 2 terms. So you go Bush, Reagan, or you go Reagan and Bush for 12 years. Bush, in his election campaign, says no new taxes. And when he did put on new taxes, I remember so many Republican voters said, nope, I'm not voting for you again. And with Ross Perot there, they voted for Ross Perot. So you had Clinton. And you had Clinton for 2 terms. And then you had Bush for 2 terms. And then you had Obama for 2 terms. And then you had Trump. And then you had a Biden. And now you have Trump back. So I think you're wrong. Okay. Friends. Reagan had 2 terms. Then Bush Sr. won. That's 3 in a row, right? But that's back in the 80s and 90s. Trump won non-consecutive. Ross Perot was the spoiler. Yeah, if it wasn't for Ross Perot, you would not have gotten Clinton. At least not Clinton that term. You might have gotten Clinton, at once Bush, the elder, timed out. So yeah. Oh, and Clinton was not big on the popular vote. At least his first term. I don't remember his. I know his second term was marred by certain things. Okay, friends. Are you aware that in 1945, or let's say 1946, at January 1, 1946, something like 70% of the shipping on the planet was United States shipping. The U.S. has a minuscule percent, I don't know, but probably not even 1% of U.S. built, owned, and operated ships on the planet. Why is that? Well, I think it was in 1946, but around that time period, the U.S. government set up a program to sell off ships to primarily our former allies of World War II. We sold a lot of those ships off to the Dutch, to the Norwegians, to the British, because we sold our ships, the Victory ships, the Liberty ships. We did that. We also, through the Marshall Plan, dismantled some of our shipbuilding facilities, and as part of the Marshall Plan, gave them to some of including some of former enemies, to revitalize, because their shipbuilding capacity was destroyed in World War II. We took our shipbuilding capacity and gave it to our former allies. I think the Western Europeans are right now a bunch of ungrateful crybabies about America. I don't think they like Americans. I don't think they're great, truly. Now, I'm not saying the generation that we liberate. I'm saying the current generations. I don't think they appreciate what we did for them in World War II. I mean, we didn't do a whole lot in World War I. I'm not counting that. I'm talking World War II. We helped rebuild, through the Marshall Plan, European industry. We've done so much for them. We rebuilt Japan. And Canada. Oh, Canada. Let's see. Can anybody define what is a Canadian? They don't speak Canadian. What are they? There's only one defining element of Canadians. They're not Americans. That's how they see themselves. That's the only thing that distinguishes themselves. They identify themselves in the negative. They're not Americans. They don't like us. Okay, there's two types of modern Canadians. There are those that have ancestry going back from 1950 and before, from World War II and before. And then there are, let me pause this while I rant. And then there are the people that, like people that have come more recently, come in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s. They've imported a huge number of people. One guy I knew who, he was a Hong Konger, Chinese Hong Konger who had immigrated. This was back in the 90s, immigrated to Canada because he could. And he realized back in the 90s, this is before even turning everything over to China, to get out. So there's a lot of Hong Kong Chinese in Canada. So these people are different. But the core, the people that got there before 1950 that have ancestry, and most of them do, you know what they are? They're America haters. They are literally America haters because about 70+% of people in Canada in 1790 were former American colonists that stayed loyal to the crown. Now, partially they leave, some of them, because local communities are kicking them out. There is some of that. But some of them leave because they're truly loyal to the crown. Some of them, and I don't dislike loyalists for being loyalists. I'm not, I have mixed feelings over the American War of Independence. That's another thing to discuss. But some of them were because they were loyal to the crown. Some of them thought that this is probably going to become, this was before, but they were worried it was going to become something like the French Revolution, that the revolutionaries were just going to, go wild, that this system wasn't going to work. Because, we're talking, this is before the U.S. Constitution is formed and whatever. So they flee. So Canada is made up of people that flee America. They're not our friends. Canada, even before Trump is first president, Canada has some tariffs on like dairy products that are like 200%. And they're complaining about our tariffs. Canadians define themselves as not American. I remember traveling around Europe because it was through my first time on a tour company back when I was just out of high school, traveling around. And some of the tour company were, English and whatnot, but a bunch of them, and some of them were Australian and whatnot. But there were some Canadians there, and they got offended when I was like, well, we're all Americans. Yeah, you're from Canada, I'm from the United States, but we're Americans. No, they got offended at that. No, we're not Americans, we're Canadian. No, we're not you. The Canadians don't like us. They're not our friends. I don't think the Germans are our friends. I don't think the French are our friends. You may like us, Beam Slam. You may think Americans are great, but most Europeans, they don't like Americans. Oh, they like the elites of Europe, like the New York elites and those types of people, but you don't like them, Americans. There have been, and we can talk about, just because I know about a bit about it, German subsidies for steel sold to the U.S. Why? If they liked us, they wouldn't be subsidizing German steel sold to the U.S. They might subsidize steel sold to Argentina or Brazil or Korea or wherever the hell. No, they don't like us. America has been giving up so much to maintain, to support in the post-Cold War world, or in the Cold War world, in the post-Cold War world, and I do think most of the nations have repaid their, I think, have repaid their Marshall loans, from the Marshall Plan. But, you know, um, you know, there are over 10,000 homes have been burnt down in California. They say over 15,000 structures, so like businesses. I'm not talking like garden sheds. I'm talking buildings have been burnt down. And oh yeah, Mexico sent some firefighters, and there were some other volunteer firefighters, and we have an agreement with Canada because their fire season is opposite to California's fire season. Where is Denmark? Has Denmark coughed up any money for victims of that have lost their homes? Have any European government coughed up money for aid for Americans who've lost their homes? 10,000 homes. That's probably at least 20,000 people. More than that. They've lost their homes. No European. Okay. Few volunteer firefighters have showed up. Fine. Thank you. Mexico, Canada, whoever. I don't know. Whoever. Thank you. How much has the U.S. given around the world for aid of natural disasters? I don't fucking care about insurance. You guys can still buy everybody a pizza. Insurance is a different issue. You can still go, hey man, you've lost your home. We're gonna send equivalent to pizza to everybody who's lost their home. We're really sorry. We'll try to make this a little less bad for you. No, but how much aid has the U.S. literally given around the world for natural disasters? How many billions of dollars? And when is Europe going to cough up a few million, a few hundred? Why isn't there $200 million check coming to California? A program to give $200 million to Californians who've lost their home. I don't care. I don't care that you may think they're rich. They've lost their home. They're having to stay in a hotel. They're having to get a temporary apartment while their home is gone for how many years until they get it rebuilt. So, no, there's the old America of having friends in the world. What nations are friends of America? I want to see a nation, a government, be friends with America. That's true. When there was Great Flood in '53 in the Netherlands, you gave us help a lot. Yeah, and I didn't know about that, and I don't know how much aid we've given to Europe, but we've around the world we've given all kinds of money for both government money as well as money raised by charity organizations for disasters around the world. Where's the give back? And I'm not saying we send a lot of money to refugees in Africa. The U.S. is rich, so it can easily take care of their own. Right. And so the U.S., because you don't care, the U.S. is rich. You don't care that people are homeless. Everything they've owned is gone. So they're rich. So this is why U.S. aid, U.S. support, the idea that you're going to have to cough shit up to us is going to happen. Whether it's things like Ukraine giving up its mineral rights. If it wasn't for the U.S., Arno, how long would the Dutch keep Curacao and the other little islands off Venezuela? How many days until Maduro would invade the islands? How many days if it wasn't for the U.S.? Does the Netherlands have the ability to defend the Dutch possessions? Is Britain going to park one of its aircraft carriers permanently off those islands? The only reason you have those islands is because the U.S. protects them. What does the U.S. get out of that? Oh, yeah, during the Cold War, it was part of a strategic alliance. But now? Do you have any troops there protecting them? Because Maduro is threatening to invade Suriname. No, not Suriname. Guyana down there. Because Suriname was the Dutch. The Guyana, the former British colony, down there because they found massive oil offshore, and he wants those things. We had an idea of exchange of Greenland for California, but the second thought, half of the goods have burned. Yeah. And yeah, you can joke. That's fine. But yeah, so, the Dutch doesn't have a navy to protect those islands. Sure, it sends down its ships, but it's going to permanently send down the ships to protect those islands? And sure, most of Venezuela's navy is literally in dry dock and weeds growing up around it. Depends if we had our frigates on station, yes, but they're all in Europe, so not right. Yeah, so yeah, and you might be willing to fight a war over it, but what does Maduro care about that? Are you going to, if he were to, send a bunch of small boats, we have about 800 Marines there. Okay, cool. They might be able to fight them off. Britain was able to retake the Falklands, but they're the only real naval power left in Europe. France, with its one carrier, isn't much of a naval power. So, this is what, and you can tell I'm frustrated by this. I just don't see Europe or any nations out there being friends. I see Korea or South Korea, because we have our troops stationed there. Yeah, they sort of kind of, they're like our puppet maybe because, whatever, because we have troops stationed there and they know that if we withdraw our troops and withdraw our defense agreements, whether it's North Korea or China, they'll be overrun because they wouldn't last 6 months if the U.S. wasn't guaranteeing their defense. Taiwan wouldn't last 6 months if it wasn't guaranteeing the defense of Taiwan, if China thought we weren't going to protect them. The Philippines. The fucking Philippines. Yeah, we liberate them from the Spanish. We set up in our occupation of them, or I forget the year that we take the Philippines from the Spanish, but we set it up that at the time we're granting your independence in 1945. Happens to be the end of World War II, but we didn't know that at the time. We're granting complete independence at that time. And yeah, sure, there's a dictator there that we support, Marcos. But they kick out our bases, our 2 bases, once Marcos goes. Now they're letting us back in because, they fear China. But yeah, we occupied when we fought local Filipinos during occupation, but a lot of the Filipinos liked that we fought them because they were the Muslim guys down in the south, and the northern Catholic Filipinos liked that we were fighting those Muslims. They liked that. But the Philippines were never the idea that we were keeping or conquering them. We were liberating them, and we were trying to Now we definitely economically exploited the Philippines, but that was to pay for their development. It wasn't just a one-way street. It wasn't raping the Philippines and we were building the Philippines up. And then, once they felt that they no longer needed us, they kicked us out, of our 2 bases there. Oh, they don't like the strip clubs outside of the bases and whatever. Yeah, I know. It's ugly living next to a big garrison base, I'm sure. But yeah, so you tell not necessarily doesn't mean from your nation. What nation is friends with America? That You would say so. What nation? Definitely not Canada. Definitely not Mexico. God, Mexicans, they don't like us. You know, all kinds of, because we've gone to war with them a lot. I mean, we have. So I understand why they don't like Mexicans don't like us, but they're not our friends. So you know, um, and if you have, whether it's Arno or, and I don't mean to pick on you guys, you're just here, Arno or Beam Slam, can you say that there's a particular nation that's truly your nation's friend, truly your friend, not just you're in the European Union together, but truly, all I hear from my Norwegian friends how much they don't like the Danes. I think some of that just sort of memeing, but I also think that there's reason behind it. I don't think they're terribly like the Danes. We regard the U.S. as our closest allies, okay, and friends up until the second turn of Trump. Well, I don't know that we're your friends. Germany is your friend? I don't know. Maybe Germany and the Dutch are friends now. Allies, yes. Allies are different things. You know, but I just don't see it. I just, I the Scandinavian people are also mostly friendly with each other, sharing about the same values. Yeah, I mean, now I will say this. I think Norwegians have an inferiority complex. Now, this is coming from the few that I know, and what 3 or 4 that I sort of kind of know. I think they feel inferior to the Norwegians feel inferior to Sweden. I think they have that. Um, I'm not sure where the sort of anti-Danish feeling, and I don't know if it's just memeing or if it's now. Of course, and it very much may be like how different states within the United States don't terribly like each other, but and it's sort of like kept within the family. So it very well may be within the family kind of thing. Less so to Germany. I think realistic geopolitical theorists, this is what ZZ's saying, would consider it naive to think that there is any such thing as a friend. Yes, ZZ, that's what I'm talking about. Britain and USA more than Germany. But you see, I don't, okay, you're worried, you're thinking about the US and Denmark with covering Greenland and Trump. Did you know Eisenhower tried to get Greenland? He pushed really hard when he was president to get Greenland. I think it was Eisenhower. Or was it Truman? I think it was Eisenhower. Do you know, Beam Slam, that the best thing you could probably do right now is to turn Greenland over to America? You know why? There's a new nuclear reactor in Greenland. Do you know that there's a nuclear reactor? Does anybody know that there's a nuclear reactor in Greenland? I didn't know this until recently. I've been looking into some things. Mostly a meme in your view, Dream Slam. Okay, within there. Beam Slam, I know he said before, he's from Denmark. Just, yeah. You know that there's a nuclear reactor in Greenland? It was put there by the United States. We dug some big ice tunnels, not into the rock, but into the ice. And we had a whole complex that we were building to put missiles and whatnot there under the ice. And then we abandoned it and just left. And there was a nuclear power plant, a small one. And it's just there. Somebody's got to go in and clean it up. There's also a huge pile, or was a huge pile of barrels with, jet and diesel type fuels, and they've all leaked. That's all melted into the ice. There's a huge natural disaster. There's an abandoned nuclear reactor sitting up in Greenland right now. Back like in the 50s or early 60s, it was abandoned up there, and it's just literally buried under tons of ice right now. So, yes, the U.S. has bases in Greenland, no, and I'm not talking about nuclear weapons. I'm talking about there's an unattended, since I don't remember if it's the 1950s or the 1960s, an unattended nuclear power plant that we put up there, small sort of, local power thing. Probably bigger than what you would put on a nuclear submarine, but that sort of kind of nuclear power plant that we put up there, and we abandoned it under the ice because we built it under the ice. And it's just sitting there leaking away. So, how many billions of dollars are you going to spend, Denmark, in cleaning that mess up? Or do you want to turn it over to us so that we clean it up? So that's a huge environmental disaster waiting to happen. So yeah, the U.S. was incredibly generous after World War II. And you know what? If Denmark had a couple of real cruisers and like 4 real destroyers, modern, and a helicopter cruiser, or vertical, aircraft, small vertical aircraft carrier, and they were actually spending money and able to defend Greenland, it's just the only reason Greenland is, is Danish still is because the U.S. has protected it. And you guys don't take any of your defense seriously. That is my personal problem. It's not that is owned by Denmark. I have no problem with it being owned by Denmark. I have the problem is that without, is Britain going to commit to defending it? With their 2 aircraft carriers and all their geopolitical needs? No, you're depending on America to protect it. And ever since the Cold War has gone away, Western Europe has neglected its defense. And I feel that the U.S. cannot afford monetarily to defend these territories. I may be wrong about that. Now, if it becomes American territory, and then we're exploiting it, meaning we're making money off of it, then we can afford to defend it. But, what about giving us $1 billion a year, Denmark, to defend Greenland? Pay us $1 billion a year. Why not? And I don't mean, Denmark can never provide full defense of Greenland. Okay. So who's going to defend it? The idea is that if Greenland can't defend it, and if Greenland isn't paying for its defense, U.S. bases there, they can have more. They just need to inform authorities that we want to build more. No problem. No, we want the mineral rights. Give us the mineral rights to Greenland, like we want with Ukraine. Give us the mineral rights. And all this talk of Canada in the 51st state, well, it'd probably be more than one state. But here's my thoughts on that. I mean, maybe you've heard me talk about this before, but my thoughts on all of that. How that started was Trudeau comes and has a meeting with Trump. And Trudeau says, Canada, I'm sure I'm butchering this, can't exist or can't afford, can't be maintained without the current trade relations with the U.S. So Trump's response is, you mean you can't function without us giving you, special trade considerations while they have protectionism on almost every single significant Canadian industry, as far as I know. That isn't it. I know they have a car industry that's intertwined with America, that parts go back and forth, blah 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 blah. But anything that's sort of domestic, like their dairy industry, has a massive protectionism from American imports of dairy imports. And that may be a minor thing, but it's indicative of the relationship. That we had basically no tariffs on anything Canadian coming in, but they had tariffs on American stuff coming into theirs. So it's not an equal agreement. So Trump's response is, well, maybe you shouldn't be a country then. And I'll say this, whatever Trump's rhetoric, the U.S. is not going to invade Canada. The U.S. is going to put on tariffs on everybody. Friends, allies, as well as enemies. We're going to put on tariffs on Taiwan. Taiwan manufactured goods, computer parts. Now, the tariffs on Taiwan, I think, I may be wrong, but I think are going to be something like 10%, where we're looking at 25% or more from mainland China. So, yeah, Taiwan is going to have to put up with tariffs. Taiwan is probably going to be smart enough to not go into a trade war. Just go, oh, yep. When we sell things to the U.S., there's going to be a higher tariffs. Now, they'll probably notice that the tariffs will be higher on mainland China. We're going to put on tariffs on Japan, more so than there are now. Japan is a big enough nation, it could probably go it alone, and go into a trade war. It'll be stupid, but it could. Taiwan can't afford a trade war with the U.S. because it can't exist without U.S. support. Because China will take it. As fast as China can get ready, China will take it. Because Japan and Korea cannot defend alone Taiwan. Taiwan cannot defend itself alone. So, now, if Canada can survive having tariffs on U.S. stuff, fine. It can go on as a nation as it had been. If it can't survive, if it's going to truly collapse, well, then the U.S. may come up and occupy it. If it truly collapses. I don't mean, you know what I mean. If it truly just spirals out of control. But then we wouldn't be so much as conquerors. We would be coming into a situation that has collapsed. If law and order, I'm talking if law and order, collapses and it's just chaos. I'm not talking about, a depression or hyperinflation. I'm talking about truly collapses as a country. But if it doesn't collapse, it doesn't collapse, and fine. The U.S. is going into protectionist mode. And we don't want to pay for defending other nations who don't pay to defend themselves. And it would be fine if Denmark were to go, okay, we're going to buy a bunch of high-end jets, and we're going to provide a bunch of, jet airplanes to NATO's defense. With that understanding, will the U.S. do naval support for Greenland? If there's, quid pro quo. But But if Denmark's going, hey, we sent a few troops down to Afghanistan when we invoked the NATO Article 5 over the 9/11 attacks. But if Denmark is doing nothing but that kind of thing, we're not going to pay for its defense. But we can't allow, if we were to tell tomorrow, oh hey, anybody wants Greenland, they can go take it. We're not going to help them out. How long until Russia takes it? How long until Canada takes it? Because you don't think Canada wouldn't take it if and there's even been talk that if if it, because there's some like World War II era agreement that if Denmark is giving up Greenland, Britain/Canada gets first dibs on it. So yeah, it's that kind of thing. Let me read the chat. I know I've been ranting here. Americans anytime come and prospecting in Greenland, but so far meet with little interest before Trump. No, they've been interested in it off and on since Eisenhower. The idea of Greenland becoming America is dead, total illusion. Only option is to take it by force. No, my understanding, your prime minister has stated that the future of Greenland is up to the people of Greenland. My understanding, that means that there's going to be a plebiscite in Greenland to see if it wants to become an independent country or stay part of Denmark. I'm not saying the U.S. is going to invade Greenland. So, but then it's NATO versus NATO. Well, yeah. NATO is dead, and Europe is realizing that now. Well, no. U.S. propping up NATO is dead. If you've listened to Trump, he has complained that the NATO members are not paying their treaty obligation amounts and haven't done so for years. That's what I hear from Trump. There may be other things being said, but that's what I hear from Trump. It's not decided yet, but if they will have an election on independent, it's not decided yet if they will have an. Okay, well, I don't know if it's decided because, like in America, the president can say something, but it takes like the Senate to ratify a treaty. It takes the Senate to declare war. Now, the Senate has given permission to the president for 90 days to have a war. I mean, literally, that's what, well, not actually war, but the Senate passed however long ago, back in the 80s or the 70s or whatever, they passed the thing that said that the president can do military actions for 90 days without going to the Senate. But if the military action was going to last more than 90 days, he had to get permission from the Senate to continue that military action. Okay. Part of that is, of course, nuclear missiles start flying. You don't have time to go to the Senate to declare war on the Soviet Union. Part of it is, hey, if you can, take over a country like Grenada in less than 30 days, yeah, the president can do it without asking us. If you can do it quick, but if it's going to drag America into something long term, you got to come to the Senate. So the Senate has given up its short-term war declaration or whatever, because we haven't been to war since 1945. But military action for 90 days without approval to the presidency. After 90 days, he has to get approval from the presidency. So Trump, can invade Denmark, but after 90 days, he has to get senatorial approval for it. And if the Senate doesn't approve the invasion of Denmark, he has to withdraw from Denmark, or Greenland. But so yeah, your prime minister, who said that the future of Greenland is up to the people of Greenland, that doesn't mean that that's the only power base within the country. You may have to get, whether it's your king's approval or your your parliament's approval or whatever. I understand that. It's not just up to one person. And another thing that's very interesting, um, very interesting. I watch a fair amount on Fridays. Normally I watch it later. Um, uh, Linus Tech Tips is you guys may have heard of it. I'm not presuming you have, but it's a one of the biggest tech YouTube channels. They have a live broadcast, and a while ago, just after the Queen died, and they're Canadian, they really didn't even sort of know or so much care or thought it was antiquated that, and it was because a couple of people were on and some of them didn't really know that they actually still sort of had a king or a queen, and that it really mattered, and it was sort of bullshit, kind of thing. Oh, we're Canadians. Doesn't matter. There's a king. There's a queen. That doesn't matter anything. Well, who's going to get to defend them? If they're not part of the British Empire, they don't have a king of Canada, because it's a king right now. They don't have the king. Who's going to defend Canada? Now, within the last week, within the last few days, the King of England visited one of their aircraft carriers. You know what he was wearing? Well, I'll spoil the first part. A uniform, because the monarchs and they have a huge closet of uniforms. They can dress as an army guy, an Air Force guy, whatever. You know what uniform he was wearing? Does anybody know here? I'll give you a chance to while I look over the thing here. I mean, I don't know if you can look it up, but I don't know if anybody knows. I sort of pay attention to this stuff, but before they can settle a lot of issues. Okay, There are very few Greenlandic people wanting to join the U.S. They want to be independent. Ah, you're very right. But what would you say if there was a serious to the Greenlandic people that if you were to join the United States, vote to join the United States would give every single Greenlander $200,000. Real money. Not buying your property. You own everything you own, all your property right, your personal or your private property rights, meaning, businesses or whatever. That all continues. But we'll just give every single Greenlander $200,000. And we sort of push a bit for Greenland, once it's independent, to have a plebiscite on joining the United States or not. And if again, we may have to say it's like 60%, not just like 51%, but 60% of the people in Greenland have to, of voters. Obviously, children aren't voting, but of voters. If 61% of the voters vote to join the United States, have a plebiscite. Oh, and by the way, you'll get a check. That may not be $200,000 day one. It might be $100,000, day one, $50,000 the next year, and $50,000 the year after that. Maybe spread out, but $200,000. Think the people of Greenland would vote for joining the United States? You think they're that raise their flag nationalistic enough to do that? I don't think so. I think if we say we'll pay the people, I think they'll sell their country to us. With no threat of invasion. If they say no, they say no. I'm just saying we offer them a big paycheck. I bet you they'll vote for it. I bet you they will. Okay. Now that you've had a chance to. Okay. The executive centralized too much power. U.S. imperialism is not what is needed in these times. A green one? No, it wasn't green. Greenlanders do not trust USA, to put it squarely. not for any money guarantee or never. I don't know. Do U.S. citizens get those kinds of money? No, but we're talking about bribing them to vote us this way. Oh, the uniform he was wearing was a Canadian naval uniform, not an English naval uniform. He was wearing a Canadian naval uniform because he's also technically the head of the Canadian Navy, whatever that may be. So the King of England went to the British Navy wearing the Canadian naval uniform. So, the only reason Canada exists as a nation today is because Britain protected it as part of its empire. Because the United States tried to take it in 1812, their invasion force got their ass kicked, and then the British Navy showed up, burnt our White House, and burnt down also other parts of Washington D.C. We fought some battles. We lost some. We won some, and then we won the final one when they tried to invade down in New Orleans. We kicked the British ass. Now that whole battle down in New Orleans happened after we had concluded a peace treaty with Britain, but neither side out. We concluded the peace treaty in Europe, because that's where I think we were negotiating either in Belgium or France or wherever. I think it was the one of the Treaty of Paris. I don't know, but we had signed a peace treaty with Britain to end the war. But the British Navy that landed lots of troops down in New Orleans area, and the U.S. forces down there neither side knew that the war was over. But we just wiped almost without loss. I mean, we had a few casualties, but we just massively butchered the British coming there. But yeah, and subsequently it's been the British Empire keeping the U.S. from absorbing Canada. The U.S. Manifest Destiny has a religious connotation, but the U.S. people still very much feel that North America belongs to the United States. So, yeah, Canada is not likely to be invaded, but it is no longer going to be propped up by the United States. And I think Canada might come to realize that being part of the British Commonwealth, I don't want to call it the Empire anymore, but the British Commonwealth might actually be an important thing for them. If nothing else, as trading partners and whatnot. Greenlanders are not children. Yeah. But we'll see. I think the U.S., I think Trump, whatever, is going to push for a plebiscite in Greenland. I think prior to that on independence or not, I think prior to that there will be a public offer made so that they'll know that what the offer would be if they chose America. But first they have to become independent. And if they go independent, then once independent, then they can choose to join America or not. Now, on Panama, I heard today that the company owning the ports, the Chinese-based company owning the ports along the Panama Canal area, are selling 80%. If I'm getting the details right, I'm probably a little off, but 80% of their interest. So they're still keeping a bit of interest, and I don't know if that'll be enough for Trump. But selling 80% of their interest of the ports to a Swiss company. So Switzerland's going to be taken over, and I don't know if that's going to be acceptable to Trump. It might be, to a Swiss-owned company. I don't know if that will be. But the Panama Treaty that we signed and approved by the Senate turned the canal zone over to Panama, but with a proviso, with a requirement that the Panamanians agreed to. I mean, we didn't have to turn it over to them. To Trujillo, I think was the president's name at the time. They didn't have to agree to this. We could have kept it. That there was going to be no foreign, non-Panamanian controlling interest in and around that canal zone. So they can own it. U.S. companies can own, things down there, in the canal zone. But no non-Panamanian stuff, business ownership, whatever, control. And I don't know the exact wording of the treaty. So, at the time the Cold War was still going on, this was under Carter. So the Soviet Union couldn't come in. That wasn't going to be allowed. China wasn't going to be allowed. Or the British weren't going to be allowed. It was going to be, local Panamanian controlled or dealing with the American businesses. And the United States ships were going to get priority and discounts to go through the canal. And the Panamanian authorities, which some of administratively outside of those ports have had Chinese nationals working there, whether they're Chinese CCP agents or not, whether you believe that any of them wouldn't be Chinese CCP agents, have been working as part of the canal zone thing, including building a more than 10-year project to build another bridge across the canal zone. It's believed that it's taking so long is because they want the project to be there to be able to collapse the bridge at any time they want to, during production, to temporarily close off the canal zone. I don't know if that's true, but there's definitely a Chinese-owned company building a bridge across the canal, which shouldn't be allowed. Think they might be able to sneak some explosives into the foundations? I don't know. I have no idea. Maybe there's U.S. watching all the time, seeing if there's any, explosives being put in. I don't know. But what would it take? Do we want that bridge built by the Chinese? So I think it would be clearly on the canal zone. Oh, and they have jacked up the prices for U.S. naval ships that should basically be going through free and highest priority, because that was the agreement. They didn't have to agree to it. We could have kept the canal. But, so that they've been doing that. So that violates the treaty. So they violated the treaty giving over the canal zone. So I think we may take that back. And and if anyone says it was never Panamanian, Panama never owned the Panama Canal. It was owned by Colombia. The U.S. shows up with some ships, and the only way even though it's connected by land, the only way you could move an army, at the time at least, from Colombia up to the Panama Isthmus of their country was by ship. We showed up with some ships and went to the local Panamanians and said, "Hey guys, $200,000 to every Panamanian if you want to become independent. Let's have the canal." Okay, it wasn't quite that, but that's you're sort of thinking that Greenland won't go independent for money. No, basically it was like, hey, that government down in Colombia that doesn't pay attention to you and you're sort of a backwater. We'll build a canal here if you declare independence. Oh, we'll protect your independence so long as you give us a canal zone, and we get to own that, and we'll protect you for owning the canal. And they go, yeah, sure, great, have at it. And so it was very popular with the Panamanian people at the time because they knew that there were going to be jobs. Because they were just the backwater of Colombia. And wasn't good land or whatever at the time. Jobs, money, all kinds of development. They knew it was going to be great for them, so they signed up. So from day one, the canal zone was American. It was never Panamanian. It was Colombian but it was never Panamanian. So it's not giving it back to Panama, like Carter was saying. We were giving it to Panama as long as they agreed to the terms. They have broken multiple elements of the treaty, so I say it's null and void. I say we should take it back. But at minimum, we're going to do it. Yes, the Swiss company might be a way to hide Chinese ownership, but it is a major shipping company. I forget the name of it. It's one of the largest shipping. Switzerland owns one of the largest shipping companies in the world, or it's Swiss owned, and I think it's privately owned. So I don't know who's behind it. I don't know if that will satisfy Trump. It might, but so Panama is something that we may use U.S. troops and re-raise the flag over the canal zone. That might happen. But that isn't America being imperialist. That's America securing something that we paid for, we built. That was something that we did. It wasn't something that we took from somebody else. You have the land from Colombia, but we could argue with Colombia, but nobody's saying we should give it back to Colombia. The Panamanians don't want to become. Well, you can think so, but we're gonna, you can try with Panama first. Well, I mean, it wasn't hard when just cause. How many hours did that take? When we took out Noriega. Now Noriega was holding a few American hostages, but yeah, we can do that again. We have that capability. We can retake the Panama Canal Zone. I don't think the Panamanian army is going to fight us any harder than it did last time. Don't forget. We've invaded Panama once already. Back in just not that long ago. You could dump some nuclear waste onto the Panama Canal. They'd think of the weather and they would want to join and have it cleaned up or not. Yeah. No, I think we're going to take the Panama Canal back. We may not. I don't know. That was one of the reasons. There was two reasons really. The biggest reason was the Iranian hostages. But the other reason that Carter lost re-election was the giving up the Panama Canal Zone, I would say. Because I remember those days. The bad economy is part of the reason, but I don't know that the people really thought Reagan was going to be able to turn the economy around. Because a lot of the bad economy was being driven by OPEC stopping oil shipments to the U.S. and having Reagan in there wasn't necessarily going to change that. So, yeah, MAGA imperialism is joining the U.S. Well, you may think so, but I think the U.S. was being destroyed, and I think we're on the track to stop it. We're just bleeding too much. Industry, people, money, military power, just bleeding too much everywhere, and we're getting it back, and I think part of this goes to why you don't like us, and why I think you're not our friends, and you never liked us. We've always been this way, people. We pushed our way across this continent, and this is part of the American psyche. Sometimes we bought things like Alaska and Louisiana and I forget the Guadalupe purchase. We actually purchased parts of Arizona and New Mexico from. This was after this. We actually, this was actually just money for land with Mexico. Some of it we took by force, but later on, some money for land. Um, but we pushed across this continent. We pushed Spain out of Cuba and the Philippines and Puerto Rico and Guam. We've kept Guam and Puerto Rico. We bought, you may be mad about this, Beam Slam. I don't dislike you as a person. You may or may not dislike me as a person. I don't know. But we bought the Danish Caribbean islands. That was, I think, just a pure money thing. I don't think we were threatening anything. I think that was like, hey, we have money. Want to sell your islands? And they go, cool. And we bought those from Denmark down in the Caribbean. And so yeah, we're a Caribbean nation in that we have Puerto Rico, the U.S. Virgin Islands down there, which again those were former Danish islands, and then of course the Panama Canal Zone. So yeah, I think we're just and for a while we occupied the Philippines, but always with the idea that we were granting them independence. We still wanted the bases there. We had them through the Cold War, but not ownership of the Philippines. Yeah, we supported the dictator, but so did the most of the Filipino people at the time too. Um, and if you think he was so unpopular, why did they elect his son, knowing that he's the son of the dictator? Yeah, he's not that unpopular. The Marcoses. I mean, it was time for Marcos to go, but getting old and no longer. And the U.S. should have had a better exit strategy for him, but again, the U.S. sometimes flubs those kind of things. So yeah, but we've always thought this continent belongs to us, and if you don't like it, you don't like Americans. That's the thing. It isn't Trump. Trump is not. See, this is where so many people get it wrong. It isn't Trump. Trump is a symptom, not a cause of these things. It's the American people want Panama back. It's not Trump. Trump just is doing it because he knows it's popular with the American people. Trump knows that Greenland, we've been wanting Greenland for a long time. I mean, at least since World War II, maybe before, that we've wanted it. Probably before it was just too much of an ice thing, back before 1900. But by 1945, we wanted it. And so we're just looking at the U.S. being the U.S., not, and so this is what I say. Europeans don't like America, don't like Americans. Oh, they like the New York elite types that have a lot of money and want want to come to the European resort towns and not be shunned, so they act in a certain way and so the try to do that. And so those types of people, yeah, Europe likes them because they're there's still a lot of Americans, particularly American women, are still gaga over British royalty. They really don't want to be have an actual king or queen, but they love hearing about, and oh yeah, we're British, or what, British meaning whether Scottish, Irish, or whatever ancestry, and they're all gaga over the British royalty. And when they go over there, they go to the royal palaces, and yeah, we have a certain, I don't know if it's an inferiority complex, but a certain sort of want to be seen as equal to our homelands, if you will, equal to the countries that we came from, because we are colonists. We are definitely colonists. And so those that do travel and do live in the Europe, routinely go over there. I'm not talking about the person who just has one, package tour, or husband and wife has one package tour once of Europe. Those are often the ugly Americans, as the term goes. But yeah, no, it's the elites you like because they want to suck up to your elites and get sort of gratitude off of it and whatnot. So yeah, um, yeah. We bought a small part of Mexico too. Yeah, that's I'm the I forget the name of that. We ZZ. Part of our final land acquisition from Mexico was actually a truly voluntary purchasing. You know, we want this land. You want some money? Here you go. We got it. It wasn't. It wasn't conquest. It wasn't anything like that. But others, we can talk about some of our invasions of Mexico. Back in the day before Trump, the world was governed by rules and not by some despots and raw force. No, 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 no. The 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 world was governed by American raw force. We are pulling back from that. The world is now on its own. If you're not going to defend yourselves, we ain't going to help you defend yourself. And the what is it? The rules based order or whatever of the UN. You know how corrupt the UN is. You've got nations like Taiwan, like Somaliland, that are not recognized by the UN as independent nations. Now I know sort of why Taiwan, because China and blah blah blah. I know the history there, but they won't recognize. Somaliland printed is its own currency, has its own army. A Westerner can walk down the streets safely. There will be no Islamic attacks on them. It is a functioning government, but we won't recognize its independence from Somalia, which is a collapsed piece of shit. So this rules-based order is propped up by America, and America's saying, "We're out, guys. You guys aren't pulling your weight. We're out." It was a colony. Okay, yeah, I don't know colony at the time, but still a thick idea to grab others' territory. It's the way Putin thinks. We don't like Putin either. What are we talking about grabbing other people's territory? I'm talking about, hey, Greenland, you want to become Americans? Vote that way. Hey, Canada, you're on your own. We're putting tariffs up. We're not going to support your industry. You do your own thing. And it was only Trudeau saying, well, without American support, Canada will collapse. Won't be a country anymore. Well, then maybe you should be part of the United States. You see, if Canadians liked us, they would want to become part of the United States. Because they celebrate Thanksgiving, but they do Thanksgiving on a different day from us Americans because they don't want to do it the same day because they don't like us. But they still celebrate Thanksgiving because they still have the same ancestry. They are collectively the same, from the same colonists. Again, it was over 70% of Canadian population in 1790 were born and raised in what becomes the independent United States. So the loyalists that flee. They are Americans as we are Americans. They are different from us as if a Californian is different from a Louisiana, is different from a New Yorker. Canadians are Americans. Okay, they are. And all we are saying is that if you cannot function as an independent country without the U.S. propping it up, well, then maybe you shouldn't exist as an independent country. And if you liked us, you would join us. But, but you don't like us, you define yourselves as not us, not Americans, fine. We're not gonna prop you up anymore. The U.S. created the UN, so fix it instead if the international law is of any interest. Okay. I don't know how you fix the UN. When you have nations like China or like Iran that get appointed to the human rights committees, okay? Nations that have zero human rights are in the human rights committees. I don't know how you fix the UN. The UN will not fix itself. So the only way we fix the UN is we go in and we shoot the people that we don't like, or kick them out of the country and say you don't get to vote anymore. So the UN doesn't do any good. The UN, since the UN does no good, and so right now, if we were to have a plebiscite, people who actually volunteer to vote, I think the U.S. population would overwhelmingly vote for the United States to leave the UN. I think there is a very, very high likelihood that the U.S. will stop all funding of all UN things. All funding. I don't know if we will actually leave. I don't know if we will physically kick the bill, say, leave, go somewhere else. We'll still be members, but you no longer get to be in the United States. I don't know if we'll do that. But Americans are more done with the UN than NATO. And if you talk about American Republican politicians, some of the old classic conservatives like Mike Lee are trying to pull us out of both NATO. The old style. Mike Lee's an old style Republican. He wants us out of both NATO and the UN. I agree with him about the UN. I think we should stay in NATO, but I don't want to stay in NATO if Europe is not putting their percentage of GDP into funding it. My idea is a UN only for democracies. That should be the entry requirement. Is China is the People's Republic of China a democracy? They would say they are. They would say the Soviet Union was a democracy. Whose definition of democracy are we going to take? If they elect a dictator for life, and he wins that election, are they still a democracy? Well, that's democratically elected for life. Is Iraq, current day Iraq, is it a democracy? I'm truly asking. Is current day Syria, the Syrian government, that now they got rid of Assad, is that a democracy? I don't know. Would they call themselves a democracy? I think election is not necessarily for a democracy, of course. Election is not a necessity for a democracy, of course. Well, I mean, is the People's Republic or whatever, Vietnam, however it's, is it a democracy? Can you have a one-party democracy? Or are you talking about a pluralistic democracy? Or, how do you define, and when there's a military coup in Brazil or Argentina in 3 years, do you kick them out of the UN immediately? If they put a military junta in power? It's not so easy. And yeah, I know I've been ranting and raving. I don't dislike individuals in other countries. I don't even dislike the governments of like Denmark and the the Netherlands or Norway. I just think they they live in a fantasy world that was created by the U.S., a world in which what's his name? The guy who wrote The End of History believes in rules-based order, blah, 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 blah. I think that's going away. I think we're going to see dark days coming. And the U.S. was heading for collapse. And I think we were overextended everywhere, and we have to pull back and we have to protect ourselves. And if and I don't, I think you know what a democracy is. No, I don't know what a democracy is. No, I'm serious. I don't know what a democracy is. Is the Deutsche Demokratische Republik a democracy? It has democracy in the name. They held elections. So was East Germany a democracy? And if you're also saying that, I will contend the United States is not a democracy, so we would not be allowed into the UN because we are a constitutional federal republic. We are not a democracy. The majority does not rule here. You can easily become the president, like we were talking earlier about Clinton, with like 40% of the vote. You can become president. So, and like Britain, is Britain a democracy? Current Prime Minister of Britain got nowhere near the majority of votes, because in the British system, whoever gets the most votes in a particular area, a county or whatever, electoral area, I don't know exactly what it's called, whoever gets the most votes. So that could be just 30% of the people, because other people might just get 25%, 15%. There's no runoffs. Like in America, there'll be a runoff to see who, like the top 2 vote getters will run off to see who gets the vote. In Britain, it's just the top vote getter in a district, in an area. And so it can be a minority government. So right now you have a minority government. Now they got they won more seats than any other party, but they won many of the seats, probably most of the seats, with less than a majority of the vote of the people in that district. And so if those people that had voted not for Labor, but had splitting the vote between Reform and the Conservative Party, often got more votes than the Labor person. Not always, but often. So you have a current non-democratic majority leader running Britain. That is not a democracy, because a democracy is majority rule through a voting system. Having democracy in the name is the most important part of a democracy. Yes, exactly, T2. Well, I don't have the space here to discuss it. I understand. You type it all out. Do you think there would have been more diplomatic way about going than the Trump administration is going? Yes, Trump is not diplomatic in his language. Absolutely. But also, you got to remember this, people. When Trump was first president, he went to the UN and said to the Europeans that you are foolish to build the Nord Stream pipeline and buy natural gas from Russia. And the German delegation, to his face, literally laughs in his face during that there. And he sees that. So the German government representatives laugh at Trump for Trump telling the truth that you should not support Putin in buying natural gas from him. You think that pissed him off? You think when Trump says, hey, Putin's a bad guy, don't get natural gas from Putin. You're stupid to do that. Ha, 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 ha. You think that doesn't piss him off? And so, T2, look at that. And obviously, Trump has been proven right. Trump was correct. You don't have an ex-girlfriend, Arno. Stop lying. So, why should Trump be diplomatic to these people when Trump was right and they were that rude to him to his face? And so why should he be diplomatic when we see Europe still giving Putin money? Europe is still giving Putin money buying natural gas, as far as I understand from some European countries. I don't know if it's all, but some European countries are giving Putin money buying natural gas. Why don't they stop that? Why don't they effing stop that? Okay, guys, I know I'm ranting. Hope it was fun to listen to. I like debating. I like people that Hungary is buying. Yeah, they very well might be. I don't know all who is buying natural gas from Putin. I do understand some European countries still are. And Putin is still allowed to sell oil and diesel and whatnot, but only at a capped level. So you guys don't. You'll still approve him selling oil and diesel, liquid stuff, not just natural gas, but liquid stuff, but only at a certain level. Ha ha ha. Why not just say no, none? Well, Robin Hood is dead. Good stream. Yes, got rid of the bandit, but there's more to Robin Hood than a bandit. If you really know the real meanings behind the legend. But okay, thanks T2, thanks Beam Slam, thanks Arno. Folk, I think you were here briefly. ZZ, thank you so much for hanging out with me. I love it that everybody, or not everybody just like agrees with me. This is not meant to you got to agree with me. I would be boring if everyone was just cheerleading what I have to say. I want pushback. So don't think that because you disagree with me, I don't want you here. I mean, if you can't take what I say, well, I understand. But, so it's that kind of thing. What's Arno saying? Putin should be thrown out of a 20-story building. No, that's what you do to generals who don't live up to expectations. Right? Okay. So see you guys.